We've been finding seats. We're going to start in a couple of minutes. I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Barnstable Town Council meeting for November 2nd, 2023. I got 7 o'clock on the clock, and just want to make a quick announcement. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, I must inquire whether anyone is recording this meeting, and if so, please make your presence known. Okay, great. And just again, wanted to welcome everybody here. Appreciate everyone being here. And at this point in time, Assistant Town Clerk Janet Murphy for the roll call, please.
Councilors: Atzlis, Clark.
Here.
Cullum.
Here.
Cusack.
Here.
Rapcorsetti.
Present.
Levesque.
Here.
Ludke.
Here.
Mendez.
Here.
Neary.
Here.
Schnepp.
Here.
Shaughnessy.
Here.
Starr.
Here.
Steinhilber.
Here.
We have 12. Thank you.
Thank you. And if we could all just please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, then please remain standing for the moment of silence, and then we have a special Town Council recognition for the people of action.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You can be seated. And I'd like to also welcome Madam Vice Chair Jennifer Cullum down with me to bring this proclamation. If you guys all want to stand and line up here, please, that'd be great.
Andre's back.
No, you speak first.
Again, so this is an opportunity really to give recognition to the people of Action and all they do for our community. And I have the privilege to know each one of these gentlemen, and there are more that are a part of this great organization. But I do want to, David Adams, Andre King, Jonathan Thompson, Kyle Richardson, Andre Barboza, Jason Gordine, and my friend Tim Luce. So I just want to recognize them and also give thanks. This proclamation is for the people of Action. Whereas the people of Action are working towards creating a better community in the town of Barnstable through uplifting action, and whereas the people of Action are a group who seek to support and lift youth in our community in the same manner as their beloved mentor, the late Mr. John Reed, and whereas the people of Action partnered with the Barnstable Police Department and the town of Barnstable to create Unity Day, an event that is intended to welcome and engage the community and local police together in a fun, inclusive, and memorable celebration, showing everyone that Barnstable is a special place and unique place with strong and a caring community bonds. And whereas the people of Action have provided scholarships to deserving students in need, and whereas the people of Action have partnered with the Barnstable Police Department, Kiwanis Club of Hyannis, Hyannis Youth and Community Center, Barnstable County Sheriff's Office, Mid-Cape Home Centers, and Dick's Sporting Goods to present an annual school supply giveaway, and whereas the people of Action have provided youth with real-world educational opportunities and a mock traffic stop for safety where students were able to role play as police officers, drivers, and passengers in a traffic stop with questions and dialogue. What is right and what is wrong? The event was in partnership with the Barnstable High School students and the Barnstable Police Department, and whereas the people of Action provided a positive New Start greeting students at the Barnstable High School on the first day of school this school year, and have continued their efforts to mentor and be a presence throughout the school. And whereas the people of Action have worked to expand their impact with new tools and initiatives and programs that pay off by inspiring future generations Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Barnstable Town Council does hereby acknowledge and give its heartfelt thanks and appreciation to the people of Action for their public service, and witness whereof I, Matthew P. Levesque, the President of the Barnstable Town Council, have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the Town of Barnstable to be affixed this day, the 2nd day of November, 2023. Thank you very much. I said Andre Barboza because I was stuck. Andre King was stuck in my head, so it's actually Jesse Barboza. Jesse, I know your name. Sorry about that. Your brother's going to get a good kick out of that, though, and he's going to be busting my chops and your chops about that, so I apologize. So again, just want to say thank you very much, and I do want to hand the microphone over to Vice President Cullen for any comments you'd like to make, please.
Yes, this group inspires me every day. You inspire me every single day to bring voices that we haven't heard in the past forward, and I'm looking forward to bringing you so much farther out when I join the school committee with Mr. King. Actually, I guess I'm so looking forward to the changes we can make in the future, and your leadership. And I'm so thankful you come forward for us every single time we ask. Even if it's just volunteering, you come forward. We need you so much. And thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Again, I want to say really thank you, and especially the newest part of that, which is that mentorship program that's so valuable and has really made a difference in the high school. I know the teachers, the students, everyone, faculty, everybody just really appreciates your presence there, and you're making yourself available to them. So just want to say thank you, and if you want to have a seat, I'm going to open the floor to the other councils so that they can comment as well. So thank you very much. So I just wanted to open it up to other councils and give them an opportunity if they so wish. Anybody to my left? Anybody to my right? Council Lucky, please.
Yeah, this is terrific. Thank you so much for doing this, President Levesque. And the one gentleman I know is, well, I feel like I know you, Andre King, because you had my son in history, and I was able to watch over Zoom, and I still am so impressed with how you ran that class. You're just full of excitement. So if you are a representative of this group, then this group has got to be just multiplied, enthusiasm out the roof. So thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you, Council Lucky. Anybody else? Councilor Schnepp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to thank you for the wonderful Unity Day. I've been able to come down a couple of years, and it's just a tremendous opportunity for the community to come together. It's always so well run and enthusiastic. So thank you for that. And I know you do many other things, but that one really is something very special. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnepp. Councilor Neary, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Reed, right? You're the next generation. It was a blast when I was in high school. Awesome. Great man, and really happy to have, the next group come up and the impacts that you make and do make and will continue to make on young kids. It's fantastic. They'll come back in years and they'll pull you aside and they'll remind you, the changes that you don't even know what's going on in their life, and all of a sudden they'll come back and they'll say, hey, you make a difference. You really do. Thank you very much.
Councilor Steinhuber, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to piggyback on that. I had Mr. Reed as a teacher when I was at Barnstable High, and hands down, that was some of my favorite classes that I had, and I just remember the influence he had, positive influence in the halls at the high school, beyond just being a teacher, and even after he retired, obviously, within the community, he just did so much. So it's great to have you guys there, kind of continuing that legacy. So thank you for all you're doing.
Last word, Councilor Mendes, please.
Two of my closest friends are in this group, Timmy and Jonathan. I don't remember not knowing them. That's how far we've gone back. But what a lot of people don't know is that this has gone on a long time before this was recognized. These guys have been doing this for many, many years, but they don't choose to put themselves in the spotlight. So to me, that means more than what they're doing now, because they did it when nobody was looking. So bravo.
I just want to add one more thing. The genesis of the whole school mentorship program, I think, was actually Representative Diggs who called the meeting, and Assistant Town Manager Clyburn and I went to a meeting that included, the sheriff and the DA and people of action and a lot of other concerned people about the violence that had happened in Barnstable on Memorial Day and prior to that at Craigville Beach. And it was an open and honest and gut-wrenching discussion about where we are and how we got here and how we could dig our way out. And the most poignant question that was asked was, of the superintendent, and who's your Mr. Reed now? And we looked around and we had a bunch of Mr. Reeds, and we were and so that was the genesis of the whole idea. And you guys really stepped up again, and this time you were asked to step up and you did. And I was so proud to see the first day of school, all of you guys there, helping us bridge this gap that has just become gargantuan between what our staff looks like and what our student body looks like. And there's so much to learn from that. And I'm really looking forward to continuing those conversations when I'm on the school committee, because I know we have a long way to go and it's going to be hard growth, but we're going to get there. And it's because of people like you. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And I know you have basketball games to coach and all that good stuff, so.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Take care. Appreciate you guys. Thanks again. Thanks, everybody in the room, for indulging that special moment, really, and overdue recognition, everything that's happening in the schools and in our community. It is now time for public comment. So if anybody in the room would like to speak for public comment, please come to the podium, sign in, state your name, and try to keep it under 3 minutes if you can, please.
Hi, good evening. I was going to speak on an item that you're voting on, but it's not a public hearing, but I just want to make a comment of the wording, so is this the appropriate time?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Public
so-
comment's always an appropriate time.
Thank you. So my name is Felicia Penham from Hyannis, and I was just talking about the tax incentive, the TIEs that you're going to approve, and I'm not talking about whether you should vote or not. It was just a word change thing that I didn't understand the analysis the way it was written, so I'm just going to talk to you about that, okay? The fiscal impact. Well, first of all, on page, just for an example, on page 4, I thought that on the under rationale, 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, the second to the last sentence there, where it talks about rents are priced consistently with prevailing rents. Did we want to say market rate, prevailing market rate rents, or market rate rents? Because prevailing rents is a very nebulous term, and I think what we're talking about here is market rate, because the whole idea of this program is to increase, economically balance the area and who's living where, right? So I just thought that didn't really describe what the rents were going to be. That's number one. Number 2, the estimated value, under fiscal impact, it says the estimated value, which is technically the assessed value, if I understand this correctly, when complete, is $3,020,000, an increase of $1,751,000, which is the current assessment, correct? So that's a 58% increase in assessed value. As proposed, the total value of the TIE, or $237,869, which is 13.6% of an increase in the assessment, right? So the town agrees to forego, it says, $237,869 over 20 years in turn for an investment of $3,020,020. And when I'm reading that, that's not accurate. This report does not disclose how much the applicant, any of the applicants, are investing. So to say it's an investment of $3 million is not accurate. It only discloses the appreciation in the assessed value to the town, which is $3,020,000, okay? And so I think the wording should be changed, because it's not the investment that's $3 million. It's the end result of what the property is now worth and what the town can now tax it on after 20 years is gone, correct? Or whatever the appreciated value is thereafter the 20 years. So I would suggest wording that it's, in anything that comes forward for these statements in a vote, is, as proposed, the total value of the TIE is XYZ. The town agrees to forego an estimated $237,869 in tax revenue over 20 years in turn for an appreciation of $1,751,000, or 58% of the current value, period, and not talk about the investment. Unless you're willing to disclose the pro forma for each project here that the builder's going to do, I don't think you should use the word investment. That's just me, because when I was reading this, this is not the investment that the builder's making. It's the assessed value, and it's a little misleading to the public. So if somebody's looking back on the records, it's just not accurate language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Penn.
Hi, Roberta Mock, 80 Greenwood Ave. Mine's more general, because I don't have the paper that you have. Okay. I think that our town should be using deed restriction to address workforce housing shortage, provide affordable workforce housing in our tourist community. I know Breckenridge, Colorado does this. It works quite well. I think we need to look at what other communities do. I want to understand what Barnstable has in plan for workforce housing, because we know we can't build our way out of this while maintaining and preservation of essential critically endangered migratory wildlife corridors. Provincetown has been doing this. I think it's great to hear that other towns on Cape Cod are. I'd like to know what our town is planned. I think that it would be a good idea to have a short-term moratorium until we get the numbers of addressing the PFAs, I don't know how to say that. Because even though we're capping, we don't have all the data. We haven't combined the data from the fire station with other data. That this is an effort that I'd like to be part of, getting this information together and having a plan addressing the PFAS before we let the development over. Just better planning to just address all these things, so that bottom line, that we come out ahead and we are all happy with the decisions that we're making here today, which isn't easy because we have a lot of things that we have to look at, right? Deed restriction, repurposing building materials is important to me. Beautiful buildings. I look at this here and the architecture is amazing. And to see older buildings that are, I want our town to look into, or the builders, require that these builders use a local architectural salvage places. I know we had one that burnt down in, I think this is at Bourne, but there's one in Harwich, and I see on social media, a lot of these builders are storing these things in their homes, waiting for a new salvage place so that we can repurpose some of this beautiful carved brickwork, whatever. I'd like to just see that. That's basically I just wonder how you folks feel about what I have to say. If anybody has any, if I stirred any thoughts or comments, I'd like to hear what you folks who represent us think about what is is in my heart. When I go over the Centerville River, coming back from work, I felt inspired to look into the electrical, the EPF's, that Craigville Beach, the Centerville River Bridge there, the 2002 bridge. I'm sorry I'm going over time, but I feel this is really important, is that our safety is more important. We used to conserve energy, and with lightning strikes, that's what I was looking at. I just was going over the bridge because I saw an eagle twice coming back over that bridge. There's a lot of wildlife there, and
Ms. Mock, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I guess what I'm trying to say is that before we make any decisions, we really have to be careful that the decisions we make aren't hurting our future. Like lightning strikes and the cost of all the wind power. Just make sure that we're making the right choices and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Schulte from Centerville. Good evening, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have just two brief comments, really reminders to the public. First, I want to stress to the public watching this evening the importance of attending the Energy Facility Siting Board's public hearing being held on Tuesday, November 14th at 6:30 p.m. It's going to be at the Cape Cod Community College in the Tilden Arts Center. This hearing will be regarding certain proposed modifications and new construction to substations located in Barnstable in order to accommodate and interconnect the 800 megawatts of power that would be generated by the proposed Park City Wind offshore project should it be ultimately approved by the EFSB. Please note that I believe this is the first in-person EFSB public hearing for Barnstable residents on anything associated with Park City Wind, so it's important that the public attends. Also, if you're interested in making a public comment at the hearing, you must register with the EFSB by email before noon on November 14th. Information about the meeting and instructions on how to register to make a public comment will be posted on the Barnstable Speaks Facebook page. My second comment is to remind the public that President Levesque had announced at the October 23rd open meeting that Avangrid is supposed to appear before the town council at its November 16th meeting. Is that still accurate?
At this point, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make the public, remind them of that. President Levesque reminded the public that they're welcome to attend and ask questions at public comment, and indicated that Avangrid will be responding to open questions that were asked by the public at the open meeting, and any questions from the town manager and the town councilors. Several of us asked earlier this week for the town to publicize both of these events in the upcoming town e-newsletters as well as on the town website in advance of the minimum 48-hour notice specified under the open meeting law requirements. We're still waiting for a response as to whether they intend to do that. I want to thank Town Manager Ellis for including a mention of that in his town manager update for tonight. Unfortunately, that document is not highly visible to the public on the website. As a matter of fact, I would venture to guess most members of the public wouldn't even know where to find that. That said, I'd like to remind the public both of these meetings on both November 14th and November 16th are very important, and ask them to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schulte.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Peter Hansen. I'm a lifelong resident of Osterville, graduate of Barnstable High School, and local business owner. I've been water commissioner at Com Water for over 18 years, a member of the Osterville Village Association for 10 years, and recently a member of the Saved Greater Dowsers Beach Steering Committee. I would first like to thank Suzanne Conley for all her tireless work in leading the Saved Dowsers Beach group through meetings, researching legal documents, gathering signatures, confronting Avangrid head-on, and calling out all of their misleading information. She is a fighter and will continue to advocate for what Dowsers Beach was designated to be, a recreation area for the enjoyment of the residents of Barnstable. Secondly, I would like to thank the Centerville group that put together the petition drive for over 500 signatures to bring these wind farm issues to the public hearing at the Barnstable High School. These include Joanne O'Connor, Sandy Jones, Bob Schulte, and Chuck Tuttle. In reference to some of the questions and statements that were brought up at that meeting, I would first like to thank Cliff Carroll for his presentation on the concerns and dangers of the proposed substations that are going to be located over the wellhead protection areas. These proposed substations present a real threat to both the source aquifer and to the pollution of the areas around it in case of fire or electrical disaster. He gave a similar presentation to the Town Council, I believe it was either this spring or this summer, with detailed handouts, photos, and documentation. I was really shocked by the potential problems that these substations could produce. What really left me in disbelief was that after his presentation, only 2 council members had any comments about it. So again, I asked as a calm water commissioner, where is the outrage? Why does this not raise many red flags? To locate a substation on top of a wellhead protection area, I think that's insane, my opinion. In addition to these alarming facts, our own COM fire chief, Chief Wynn, has said during our meetings with him that the fire department does not and will not have the ability to put out any electrical fire at these substations. They will respond and contain the area, but they do not have the equipment to put it out. Think about that for a minute. Referring back to the meeting at the high school, I think all of us attending were stunned after listening to a local physician list all the potential biological effects that the electromagnetic fields cause. A few here: cancer, nervous systems and brain issues, sleeping disorders, cardiovascular issues, hormonal disturbances, immune system changes, impaired learning, fertility impairments, metabolic effects, interpersonal effects, diabetes, etc., and behavioral issues. Very disturbing findings. Another doctor discussed the effects of increased bacteria growth in areas around the cables that are directly caused by excessive heat that they give off. A third doctor reacted to these a third doctor talked about the issues with people that have pacemakers and how it would affect, how they would react to these electromagnetic fields. No answer. Again, I asked, where's the outrage? I was brought up to be honest. That's the values that we were taught. But this is severely lacking in all sectors of the government, and especially with these wind farm companies. We elect councilors to represent the concerns and wishes of the people of their precinct and to address those issues. That's why it's even more frustrating that our own councilor from Precinct 5, knowing all the concerns I've just talked about, ignores them and continues to act like he's a representative for Avangrid. In fact, it was just brought to my attention yesterday that Paul is being supported by the Environmental League of Massachusetts, whose board of directors includes Ken Kimball, who we all know is a vice president of Avangrid. Just connect the dots. My time is up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
My name is Cliff Carroll, also lifelong resident of Barnstable High School and Barnstable, West Barnstable Elementary School. I did not expect Peter's words there on those different subjects, so I'm going to be able to cut my thing here down. The first thing I'd like to say, though, is in reference to the host agreement. I understand the town's position, and when you really read through it, they really did a great job trying to protect the town, Charlie. But I understand, they're worried about breaking an agreement, that type of thing, getting sued. But the question is, where do we draw the line? We're supposed to have special things in place to protect our firemen. These transformers, when they blow up, they burn literally for 3 days. As part of Avangrid's deal, they were actually by now supposed to develop and implement a construction period spill prevention control plan for the town. They haven't done that yet. I have attended Cape Cod Commission hearings. I've attended Barnstable Conservation hearings. I've attended West Barnstable Civic Association meetings. I've attended Osterville Library meetings. At every single one of those meetings, I asked Mr. Kimball directly, how much oil? What kind of oil? Has anybody mapped out the well fields and shown what type of direction the oil is going to go from the 2 highest points of land in our town, at the HU Flying Hill Road and at the fire tower in West Barnstable? I'm not going to bore you, but I am going to print this and get it to everybody. This is the actual federally required construction plan that they have to deal with on the federal side of the cable. One of the federal requirements for them, because they contain oil, 158,000 gallons of oil in their offshore transformer, they have to provide this report. This report is actually 180 pages long. It's referred to as the oil spill modeling study. And what I did is I just printed up a couple of the images very quickly just to give you an idea. They have to show where the oil is going to go in the event of a spill from the offshore oil transformer. We should be doing the same exact thing in our well fields. It has to do the four seasons. In this case, it does the wind directions, tide directions, prevailing currents, that type of thing. It also shows that if the oil transformer that's 15 miles south of Martha's Vineyard has a catastrophic spill, the oil actually reaches Craigville Beach, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard. Craigville is on schedule to get hit within 10 hours of a spill. I've taken the time to meet with some of the town water departments and the fire departments. The fire departments have no idea how they're going to put this out. The water companies have never been asked to map where this oil is going to go. They already have down gradient maps. Town of Barnstable 2 years ago, with Ms. Clark present, had a meeting at the West Barnstable Fire Department about the backup well that's supposed to be 5 million gallons a day in the event that we have any other spills go down. This is tens of thousands of gallons of dielectric transformer oil. This stuff is poisonous if it gets in our water. It's poisonous if it burns.
Mr. Carroll, you're at 3:45 right now.
Okay, thank you. I'll make this instant. The design we keep hearing about that is designed to offset everything, it's only in the event of a record rain. It's 110% of record rainfall. It does not cover us in the event of a fire or an explosion, and that's exactly what transformers do. Again, November 16th, you have a hearing or an information session coming up. I think it would be prudent for the town to request that the fire chiefs attend it and the water commissioners attend it, because they have no idea. And to this day, Vineyard Wind has still not supplied the designs for the transformers, the materials included, and more importantly, what they're going to do in the event of a spill or a fire. And that's right in their proposal. And again, it's tough to do this in 3 minutes, but Mr.
You're at 5, and you haven't done it in 5, so thank you.
All right. Charlie, I think these are all substantial changes, and that allowed us to come back in and request additional information and actually push for more reports before. Thank you very much for the time. Sorry to go over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anybody else in the audience like to speak for public comment?
Good evening, everybody. My name's Chuck Tuttle. Centerville Elementary, Barnstable Junior High School, Barnstable High School, Cape Cod Community College, Massachusetts Maritime Academy, Northeastern MBA. We're doing the schools tonight. We are all in favor of clean energy. The Town Council public meeting at Barnstable High School on October 23rd was an absolute success. More than 700 people attended the meeting in person, and over 100 people watched online. Approximately 1,000 Barnstable citizens in person and online. And to date, we've had 696 views of that very exciting meeting on YouTube. So people are involved, which is great. The vast majority adamantly opposed the landing of billions of watts of electricity cables under our recreational and residential areas. The meeting ran 3.5 hours, and at every opportunity there were multiple people waiting at the microphones to voice their concerns in opposition to the further industrialization of Barnstable's recreational areas. I ask you, when was the last time that the town of Barnstable had 1,000 people in the room at the same time on one issue? Please remember this as you consider your next step with these proposed projects. And please remember that you are not here to represent yourself or your own opinions. You were elected to represent the citizens of your precincts, and they have spoken. People are opposed to landing large amounts of energy on our beaches. They are generally not opposed to wind power. Wind power is great, but landing industrial-sized electrical cables in residential and recreational areas is destructive, dangerous, and unnecessary. Fortunately, control is still in the hands of local citizens through the town council. Article 97 is a powerful tool which allows towns like ours to say no to the inappropriate use of recreational areas. We have the power. You have the power to stop the further industrialization of our recreational and residential areas. No easements granted, no Article 97 waivers. Recently, the governor of New York took common sense action, as reported on October 23rd. And I quote, "Although a proponent of offshore wind, New York's Governor Hochul respected the rights of local communities and their leaders to have the final say on the location of offshore wind farm landings. The governor vetoed a bill that would force the community of Long Beach, New York, to issue a permit to allow an offshore wind farm developer to run its transmission line through a local park." End quote. Sound familiar? The Energy Facility Siting Board is the state agency tasked with making decisions about the location of energy infrastructure. They will have a meeting on Tuesday, November 14th, 6:30 p.m. at the Tilden Arts Center at Cape Cod Community College to receive public comment on the expansion of Eversource infrastructure to accommodate the proposal to land industrial energy cables at Craigville Beach and Dowses Beach. Please show up. Tuesday, November 14th, 6:30 p.m., Cape Cod Community College, Tilden Arts Center.
You're at 3 minutes, 45 seconds.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. If you care about safely enjoying town beaches, if you care about your property values, please show up. Soon, we will have 800 million watts running under Covell's Beach from offshore wind farms. That's more energy than Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant ever produced. Barnstable has done its part. Please, let's work together and communicate to the state agencies and federal authorities that Barnstable has done its part. Working together, we can stop this. There are better ways to bring billions of watts of energy ashore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. Anybody else in the room like to speak in public comment? And just like to recognize that Councilor Atchis has graced us with his presence and is at the dais. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I am Heather Swenson. I am a taxpayer living in Centerville on Lake Wequaquet. I live 1 mile from the proposed substation on Chute Flying Hill Road. I feel I must speak up on behalf of other lake residents to protect our lake. A substation built in the vicinity of the Knights Inn on location on Chute Flying Hill Road has the potential to be an environmental disaster. I wrote you guys this letter, so I'm going to kind of ad-lib it here a little bit. In the event of an accident or fire, chemical fire suppression would be required. An industrial accident at this site would have the potential of contaminating groundwater, all draining to Wequaquet Lake. We have put so much time and effort into protecting our lake from fertilizers, pesticides, invasive weeds. It is almost unbelievable to me that the town is not putting our waterways first in their decision-making. This is the first project of this size ever proposed in a residential area. Do we want Cape Cod and Centerville to be the guinea pigs to a foreign company? Residents and tourists taking exit 68 from Route 6 in Barnstable, their view is going to drastically change by a substation project. Is that the first impression we want of our ocean resort town? Power grids and industrialization. I urge you to not sacrifice Wequacket Lake for the convenience of this project. Park City Wind, Avangard, all these wind companies, they have approached Barnstable because it's the easiest place for them to come ashore. Our small village should not be put in jeopardy for the benefit of a big foreign business. Do not sacrifice our lake for the sake of $16 million payout promise. That is small money to a company of that size, and they do not care about your town, our town. We taxpayers need you, the town council, to say no to this project and protect our lake and waterways. I'm not opposed to clean energy, but I believe it has its place for landfall and construction, and that location within a residential neighborhood is absolutely not the place. Mr. Cusack and Mr. Steinhilber, I want to thank you. You are the only two people that even acknowledged the fact that I sent an email to all of you. So I thank you, and God bless America. Take care of our town.
Ms. Swenson. Anybody else like to speak in the room? Sarah, does anybody like to speak remotely?
Yes, we have Mr. Gardner.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gardner, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Jack Gardner. I live at 54 Abbey Gate Road in Cotuit. I'm a United States Navy Vietnam veteran, and I'm here this evening to ask about the process that's necessary to pursue the idea of making beach passes for the veterans of Barnstable free of charge. As you are most likely aware, Veterans Day is next Saturday, November 11th. And the town of Mashpee already has this benefit in place for their veterans. And other towns on the Cape are in the process of considering or implementing similar programs. If you would let me know what the pathway is for Barnstable to have a veterans free beach pass, I will help to work on having it in place for next summer for the many Barnstable veterans to enjoy. So I asked that question, and thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Mr. Garner. Appreciate your service to our country. Thank you. Is there anybody else like to participate remotely?
No, that's all we have.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like, if I could please, Town Manager Ells, if I could ask you to come to the podium. I just have a few questions for you. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that I think Town Manager Ells did a great job in that October 23rd meeting. It was a lot of information that needed to be digested in a short period of time. And just the fact that, we've gotten a lot of comment that, why weren't the counselors available to answer questions? And if every counselor had an opportunity to answer every question, we probably would have covered a lot less territory. And having our town manager, who's been here since the beginning, been very concerned about a lot of these different issues as they've gone along with the staff. I thought did an excellent job moving through the meeting as quickly as possible and addressing as many of the issues as possible. So I just want to publicly thank you for that. And they did a great job. With that being said, and we don't have a huge agenda tonight, so I really just need to set the record straight. We get a lot of meeting, and I think it's just time to make people understand that this is not a new thing. This has been something, wind farm, that we've been involved with, against, pro, whatever it might be. This has been going on since 2018, 2017? 16, thank you. So even before I became a town councilor, I know with decisions, that's right, it took some time to actually come up with an agreement. But I think it's really time to just, in the spirit of transparency, where we've been thrown that ball, but I think it's really important to understand how this got started, Mark. So if you could please, Town Manager Ells, just give how do we get here? Where did it start? As far as, I know it was supposed to be over at Lewis Bay in West Yarmouth, and then how did we get here? Because I think it's important to understand exactly how we got here. Thank you. Try to keep it under 3 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Thank you.
Actually, I've been letting everyone go over tonight, so
I
you're
have
in luck.
3 minutes and 45 seconds.
No, then I
please.
warn you, and then you get to go on for 2 more
Okay.
minutes. Yeah.
All right. Mark Ellis, Town Manager. I suppose if you ask Charlie McLaughlin the question, it started somewhere about 20 years ago when he got involved with the Cape Wind project.
And only 3 minutes for Charlie. I forgot to say that. Yeah.
But as far as my role in 2016, when I became town manager in Barnstable, there was a proposal that I was following for a landing in Yarmouth, and reading about it and listening to Charlie McLaughlin. And Charlie informed me that as part of the Boehm filing that the proponent did, they showed us Barnstable as the alternative landing location. So he gathered up information and identified that we were the alternative landing at Covell's Beach in that submitted proposal. So we had them come in, and it wasn't the same group of people at the time that we ended up working with on the first project. Charlie asked me if he could go to Yarmouth during a review of the project because he wanted to make sure that if it did proceed, that no other wind could interconnect, because this was going to be off the backside of Martha's Vineyard, and he was concerned that perhaps a future project might be able to interconnect in the cable that would come through the sound, and therefore ultimately result in what we had fought long and hard for, relevant to the Cape Wind project, which ultimately failed. So I said, sure. Charlie went to the meeting. The next day, the selectman called our town council and said, why was Barnstable's legal representative there? And town council called me, and I responded, and I said, I told him to go and to observe and to share experience if appropriate. I think that it generated more questions and perhaps maybe more opposition. At that time, the town council asked me to proceed with going to Vineyard Wind and asking for the landing locations to be reversed. And that began this discussion and ultimately the permitting of a landing at Covell's Beach. While that, and then to jump ahead, now we're heading into 2019. We found that, or we didn't find, the proponent found that what they were proposing was too much to try to land at that location. And they were going to split the project. And there was preliminary discussion about perhaps going back the other route. And again, the town council asked that we look to put it west. And we did proceed with that. Now, throughout this, I absolutely have, and you could tell by my responses certainly throughout the public meeting that we had on the 23rd, I have been hands-on involved with each of these 3 proposals. And certainly have advised the town council as best as I could as it has progressed. The third project, the Commonwealth Wind project, was not what I've just said. Basically, the proponent asked whether the town of Barnstable would entertain a third landing. Came before town council with this, and they asked. I asked the town council, shall we entertain this? I think the initial question was, where? Where west of Craigville Beach? And there was no answer at that time. And so they proceeded with identifying a location, filing with Boehm, identifying the Dowses Beach site. When that was filed, we brought that to town council to review. and it's still in review, and we've made our comments relevant to it, as you know, where appropriate. That's generally how this has evolved. I mean, certainly many years of hands-on reviewing and understanding where authorities fall. But in the first two projects, the town of Barnstable was clearly supportive of the location, both locations, as to where they landed, and proceeded accordingly. Many meetings, and I'm trying to think what else I should say relevant to this. Well, that's probably, I mean, what other aspects of this?
I guess
There's so much detail here. I mean,
Sure.
the original power purchase agreements were for 7.8 cents per kilowatt, right?
Sure.
And so when they were at the table, everybody talks about, well, it's a different argument about,
Yeah.
you know, if we were opposed to this, it probably wouldn't have mattered how much money. But the town council took this in a direction, and I continued to administer it and didn't advise the town council that there was something that wouldn't allow it to proceed. When we were negotiating the host community agreement at the original numbers, there was significant revenue limitations on that in them for them to consider as they tried to move a project. You know, now when I hear speculation of over 20 cents a kilowatt hour for what they're going to, I mean, yeah, of course, you know, we should be able to reopen if we're interested in reopening and not stopping it, to renegotiate that. But I don't know that that's clearly an option for us. So there have been some I agree, substantial changes. We are in the process. So the first project is permitted and implemented. The second project is in permitting, though it's final stages. The third project is in permitting, I guess I'm saying midway, but I don't even know if they're that far in their permitting. And we've expressed that, you know, you've rescinded authority for me to do some final steps relevant to the second projects and to proceed at all on the third project, except where we have to because they filed a permit. It's authority outside of ours, and we need to comment on that project, which we did, and we said that we do not support it as proposed. So each of them will require a different strategy. I think that the protection of our water quality has been at the forefront of everything we've done. And the permits aren't issued yet. So I was having a conversation with some of the speakers earlier, and they're asking very logical questions relevant to, at this point in this process, what can be done? And so I know I'm going to have working meetings with a group of individuals, primarily from the Park City Wind area project, but I know there's some others that will come over for the Commonwealth Wind project, which is fine. That's what I'm here for, to have these discussions. And we'll do so as frequently and for as long as we need to. But I think, you know, one of the conversations we will have is to try to outline where input still can be given, where impact still can result from that comment. And I think that much of the approving authority, though not all of it, and I've said this, and I think after the 23rd, that's maybe the most comment that I got back was, well, you said we can't do anything about it. I didn't say that. I said that the authority for approval of this falls outside of the town of Barnstable for most aspects of the project. And I've said that consistently. We've said that consistently. There are absolutely points at which we can intervene. But most of it falls outside. And one of the most powerful state agencies is the one that was referred to earlier that's going to be holding a hearing on the Mid-Cape Reliability Project up at Cape Cod Community College on the 14th. So they still need to issue a certificate on the Park City Wind, and then ultimately would have to review and, issue approval on any future project. Commonwealth Wind is the other one. The one thing I will say to everybody is we should not take our eye off of this ball, because this can proceed without us. And the public I've gotten some emails about, well, how can this be going to this group? Or how can you be talking about that? Or why don't you just say no to the purchase of property? Well, we can't do that between private to private. But more broadly, if the authority doesn't fall with us, then in my capacity as your town manager, I have to look at what authorities we do have and appropriately respond, knowing those authorities. And we have done that. We've done it on the first project, we're doing it on the second, and we will continue to do it on any subsequent. We've done it on the third too, but, sorry.
No,
that was
that's
way over 3
well, not only
minutes and
that,
45
but
seconds.
I completely put you on the spot, so I appreciate that, Town Manager Ellis. I just think it's important for people to understand that this was, when was first presented to us, this was a way, and there are people in the room that have pointed out that and to them it wasn't a lot of money necessarily, but it was a way to help subsidize our sewer project with paving of roads, that it was a way to procure money to help our water supply, and it was a way to further our sewer project, maybe speed up some things, and also be a part of clean energy at a lower kilowatt hour rate. So that being said, it was almost unanimous at the town council at that level. Now, some people would say that, and they were proponents, Councilor Hebert, Councilor Biedenbender, they were very supportive of it. And also, but at the helm of it was Councilor Jimmy Crocker. And the fact is that he was really the driving force behind a lot of these decisions. And I just think it's important to understand that he had the best interest, because if you go back to these meetings, it is obvious that not only was a proponent, but at the same time, it was an opportunity to be able to provide for the town of Barnstable in a way that maybe we weren't be able to, it was a bucket, so to speak, of money that we could use to help. And as far as the EMF at the time, because I know Mr. Tuttle is quick to always mention that, but quite honestly, if one project isn't safe, then why would we do any other? And that's kind of what you're hinting at. But at the same time, the EMF research that I've done about underneath the ground in an insulated tube in concrete, and reviewing and trying to research other projects that have been done in Europe that, they've done that. They don't even put them in encased concrete. They just put them in insulated tubes. And the EMF is very, very small compared to even just regular power lines that are above our heads, never mind something that would maybe come off of a nuclear power plant in Plymouth. And I think that it's important that people understand that this power is generated by wind, not nuclear power, and that the lines are underground, not above our heads like they are or were all over Plymouth. And the electromagnetic field that was created by those was much greater than anything that would probably be created underneath the ground. So I'm continually doing research from that. Mr. Tuttle, if you have research in regards to that, of what EMF is actually coming out of the ground possibly, or maybe some other things that we can compare it to, I would welcome that research. We talked about putting together a work group in regards to that. And also, too, to Mr. Schulte's comment, I know you mentioned to me about, I I've spoken about having a meeting on November 16th, but truth be known, that was something that came out of our work groups together. Before the meeting came about with Town Manager Ells, we asked for outcomes. What would you like it to be? You know, the Centerville Four, as they call themselves. And when they put that petition, I just want people to understand that we really worked hard to try to find out what the outcomes of the petitioners, what they wanted it to be. And it was that the Avangrid would not be in that meeting on October 23rd. But at the same time, there were people there that wanted to ask questions directly to Avangrid. How would we address that? And the suggestion came up. I think it was Town Manager Ells, please correct me if I'm wrong. And it was agreed upon that that would be the best way to do it. But I also understand that the next morning after the meeting, Mr. Tuttle actually went on the radio and said that that was baloney. And so I just want to set the record straight that that was not baloney, that that was something that we did discuss in the meeting. However, if that's not something you no longer want to do, please let us know, and maybe we can take a different direction. But the point was that we were going to move forward with Avangrid to give them an opportunity to answer any questions people had and concerns. But I also think it's important that we focus on third party and try to get somebody neutral as possible and try to answer those questions. I've talked to Chief Wynn. I know he's agreed to get a electrical engineer, actually paid for by Avangrid, but neutral as a third party, that they'd be able to get that. And I know he's going to share his research on that. But we're going to really do the best that we can to make sure, because what you're insinuating is that this is somehow dangerous, and that's fine. I get that, but really we're already doing one project, so that's really important. And if it's really a threat to our property values and things of that nature, which I haven't seen any evidence of. I talked to people at Cape Cod 5. They haven't given me an indication that's going to be the case. Other banks, and so, but we will continue that research and move forward. And I look forward to more conversations. So I'd like to open it up to any other council who'd like to make a comment. Looking to my left, Councilor Mendes.
Anybody who knows me knows I'm a straight shooter. I'm not going to sit there and bullshit you. We're all worried about locations of the substations. We're all worried about disruption to the beaches and wildlife. We're all worried about the fear of the unknown. But just because you're the loudest voice doesn't mean you're the only voice. My constituents are probably amongst the youngest in this town, and there are a lot of them that are for this project. So when people sit up here and say, follow the money, we make $500 a month up here. That's what we get. We're volunteers. We do not deserve to be abused and to be questioned our integrity, because nobody's making money from doing this. Nobody. Who said that? Somebody was up here just saying it. I'm not going to debate you. No, somebody said it, and so I'm not going to sit up here and debate you.
Mr. Carroll, no, you don't call point of order, sir. This is council response. No, sir. No, please stop.
My constituents, I wasn't going to run again. My constituents asked me to run again, okay? And it's up to us to make best decisions for the town, for our constituents. You know, the ones against this project aren't the only ones that have a voice in this. They're not. There are plenty of people in this town who are for this. And like I said, just because you're the loudest doesn't mean you're the only one. And I'm not advocating for this project. I have plenty of questions about it. But I can't make an informed decision until all the science is done and it's in front of me. I'm with that with everything I vote on, not just this project. So the only thing I could ask is to have a little bit of decorum and treat each other with a little bit of respect. Because we're all up here as volunteers. Everybody has a chance to run for this office if they want to run for it. So if you feel that strongly for it, put your name in the hat and run for it. Because like I said, I wasn't going to do this because of stuff like this. My constituents asked me to run. My constituents went out and got my signatures because they wanted me to run and have skin in the game. It's not right to question people, their integrity, follow the money. How insulting is that?
And again, I just want to make sure too that I don't think anybody was saying, Mr. Carroll, that you had said anything like that. But I think sometimes too, when the question gets asked, where's the outrage? I am elected to make logical decisions. It's not my job to fly off the handle and get angry and stand on top of this dais and just tell people to get out of town. My job is to listen to all sides of the story and try to come up with the best decision for the town of Barnstable. And that's where it is. And I think it's what Council Mendes is saying is sometimes it's, we feel, and there have been, I read that as well. Maybe it's not somebody in this room, but there's other people who make comments and different things that we hear. And that's unfortunate. So that people do question our integrity. So just understand that this is something that's been in the works for a long period of time, that it's sometimes, if you're coming in just recently on the game and it's, we're, a little bit startled by, because again, it's been talked about for 5, 6, 7 years. I just think it's important to have patience and understand where people are coming from and the benefit at the time. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I was very concerned at the meeting. I'm glad we had the meeting. It's the way democracy works. But it really concerns me when people in the audience or the citizens don't understand that they can come see us the first and third Thursday of every month, with the exception of July and August, where we only have one meeting. Because what that means is that their information is coming from 1 or 2 or 3 different sources, not from us, and likely not from the Channel 18 manager reports. And the lack of a local paper worth anything is a big problem too. It concerns me when people ask why we're not voting. It makes me feel like they don't understand the form of government we have. We don't have town meeting in Barnstable. Maybe you want town meeting. I don't know. That's a charter change, and you can lead that if you'd like. But that's not the form of government we have. The form of government we have is actually very nimble in that we can discuss with concerned citizens every 2 weeks. And I see the same faces here again and again. Would that 100 more people from the meeting would come and speak, right? Because then we could have a full-on conversation with them, and I wouldn't be so concerned that they're just getting like little snippets of truth mixed in with a little bit of hyperbole to gin up some interest in municipal government. You're all on the take, blah, blah, blah. Because immediately we're like this, which is not the way it should be. We are here the first and third Thursday of every month doing business for the town of Barnstable. This is one item that we're doing for the town of Barnstable. Some places to find real information. Not Facebook, not Nextdoor, maybe not your neighbor. How about Channel 18? How about you call the town manager's office? How about you call your town councilor? There's just 2 sides to the story, and it gets away from us very quickly when we're not all on the same page about how municipal government actually functions. Town meeting is a totally different baby, obviously, right? We all get together and we vote not here. That's not what we're doing. Maybe you guys want a mayor. I don't know. Then do it. Lead the charter change. But to Councillor Mendes' point, honestly, I mean, we're volunteers. The reason why no councillors said, oh, I know exactly what happened in that meeting is because we weren't present for that meeting. I'm a sommelier. Do you want me writing your host community agreement? I don't know, man. I wouldn't trust me with that. There'd be champagne, but I mean, I just think that there's a real kind of lack of understanding about what our role is here. We are hands off, nose in. We are not hands on. That is not our form of government. So I really wish that the citizens that supported the meeting, which is a good meeting, will understand that that is not a requirement to get in front of us as a council. Come here the first and third Thursday of every month and speak to us. How am I to know that so-and-so in Centerville has a question about la 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 if I'm not called and asked? There's a responsibility that goes along with being a citizen, right? So we're held accountable to the electorate. You guys vote us in and you vote us out at will. And we like it or lump it. Thanks for the $500 a month. We're in, we're out, right? Mark is held accountable to us, Mark Ells. We like it, we don't like it, we let him go, we rehire him with a new contract. His staff is held accountable to him. My question is, who holds the electorate accountable? I don't think this is the Founding Fathers' understanding of the way democracy should be, where uninformed people come and yell and say nasty things, phone calls, like, really? I mean, we are here volunteering our time. We all live in Barnstable. We are your neighbors. And yes, we're opinionated. And that's good. That's what got us elected. And again, to Councillor Mendy's point, if you want to take a shot at it, come on. You know, it was a long 12 years for me. But, you know, it really upsets me when people don't understand the processes of our government. And I'll tell you one thing, in the 12 years that I've been here, which is almost a quarter of my life, I'm a little older than that, but almost a quarter of my life I've been here, these are the finest people I've worked with. From planning to the town manager's office, and I loved Tom Lynch too. Ruth Weil, I mean, look at Karen Nober, Charlie McLaughlin. These people know where all the bodies are buried on all of these wind farms. The institutional knowledge in our executive branch is great. So I hope people know that when you do get elected, it's not the people who elected you that are going to get your policies pushed forward, right? It's not. It's your peers up here that are going to get your policies, which is probably why we're not tearing down the airport. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Anybody else to my right? Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to address the first two public comments that were at this meeting today, and that was Ms. Penn's comment about the language in the TIE, the tax incentive exemption motion that we will be considering under old business, actually. I, too, saw some issues with some of the language, and mark my word, we will be having a full conversation when we get to those items in the agenda. So thank you for bringing it up to our attention. And Ms. Mock, I believe you were in attendance. I think I saw you at the housing conference that was held at the Cape Codder on Thursday, and I welcome you bringing some of the suggestions that were discussed at that meeting. I think that we are very open to seeing ways that we can increase the amount of housing that people can live in this town with not necessarily always building it. So thank you for bringing that forward to us tonight.
I think it's important too. I should make a correction here because as I was speaking earlier in regards to the projects that were moving forward, I shouldn't have said that everything was unanimous because I don't have a record of all those votes in front of me. But I will just say there's a vast majority of the councils that were in favor of projects as they move forward. So they definitely passed. But I just want to make sure I correct that. So I apologize. Councilor Rapker-Setti, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. In response to Mr. Gardner's request to offer lifetime beach permits to veterans, I wholeheartedly support that. And I know I had mentioned it, I think, when Scott Dutra was in charge of Veteran Services, God rest his soul. And if there is a way forward, Mr. Ells, I really think that it's high time the town would offer that to our veterans. My father, 99 years old, a veteran of World War II, Navy veteran, likes to go to the beach, maybe not to partake like others, but would like to be able to sit at the beach and stroll on the beach, and I know Mr. Gardner as well, and many others that would partake and appreciate the offer of this. And I don't think it's much to ask for the town. So I think I'd like to see the town move forward in offering this.
What I can do, well, thank you, Mark Ells, Town Manager. Certainly what I can do, well, first, I do believe that Recreation Department has temporary passes for veterans. Number one, if they know that, to go there, ask, so they can have admittance to our beach at no charge. But it is limited. So I think there's whatever, I believe Patty Machado may have developed this, and it is 4 or 5 that are available. So that doesn't answer what you're asking, but this has been contemplated. What I would like to do is first check about offering this, because when you offer it to one group, many times there are many people who would be in need of this or deserving of this. So I just want to check with the parties to be legal and others to make sure that we don't leave, we only say veterans, but if there are other groups, once we do that, that now when they ask we have to do it, I want to understand that going into this. Secondly, there are budget impacts of this. So I would like to quantify it, and it would be an estimate because we don't have this program right now, and that would be something that we would bring in. I'd talk to Mark Milne about the timing because our budget starts July 1, so we would really need to look at, how to offset any fiscal impacts and what they might be. If they're insignificant, then obviously we could manage it, very closely to what we already take in. And if not, then we would come to the council for a request of the additional money within the recreation budget under that program. So certainly, that's kind of logically how I will progress through this, and I'll just keep you advised, going into probably early next year. I'll come back and I'll give you an update as to what I found out.
I would appreciate that. I think all the veterans would too.
Yep.
Speaking of veterans, since it's just about Veterans Day, and it's also election time, I've seen political signs on our memorials throughout the town, and I respectfully request that those political signs or any other signs for yard sales or whatnot not be placed on our memorials throughout the town. So that's just a word to the public. Thank you. Thank you, Council Rep Grissetti. Council Lutke, please.
Thank you, President Levesque. Yeah, I'd like to speak to each person who spoke. Felicia, thank you. This is the first time I'm seeing this on an agenda, so I really appreciate your comments because I've been, reviewing some meetings and things to get a better understanding of this. So I really like those comments, especially about the investment versus the appreciation. That makes a lot of sense. Roberta, again, the deed restriction, I think it's a great idea. It's something I hope that we see as we flesh out the housing production plan. I think it could be a piece of that. And addressing the PFAS, I think Town Manager Ells has done a lot of discussions with that, especially going forward when he's talking about emerging contaminants in the effluent and that kind of thing. So I think your point is well taken, and I think the town is already moving out on that to address that as we go forward. And then repurposing materials from demolition, absolutely. And it kind of goes with your last comment, which had to do with conserving energy, conserving resources, and certainly our solid waste disposal is a large expense, and demolition debris and anything that could be salvaged and reused absolutely should be. We should be as conscious of that as possible. And Bob Schulte, thank you for speaking about the meetings coming up. Very important to keep doing that. And again, I still appreciate your efforts for the open meeting that we had. Peter Hansen, same thing, and I appreciate your shout out to Suzanne Conley, who's done such tremendous work to bring issues to light, and then the 4 people again who worked on the meeting of the voters. And I will say, I think that meeting was important. I know Vice President Cullum has said you could come here, twice a month, but I think with an issue this large, with the history that we've had discussed this evening, I think a meeting of the voters was appropriate. And I think I really do admire that you did that, and I think it was very well done, and it brought a lot of issues to light. And just on that, when you talked about President Levesque and Town Manager Ells, when you said there were 2 points where you intersected with the Town Council, were those open meetings? Were there discussions? Was it an open agenda item where there were meetings and then a vote was taken? Or was it, how was that? What
Town
was
Manager
the
Ells.
mechanism for that?
There were votes taken all along the way, anywhere that primarily the town council needed to give me the authority to do certain things, mainly enter into an agreement that was going to be for the duration that we were talking about. But if you go back to my town manager reports, they have been very kind of factual information in all areas to try to kind of chronicle exactly progressively what we're discussing. And so every council meeting, I was up here talking about those discussions with Vineyard Wind and how various aspects, whether it be their permitting, once authorized, progress on a host community agreement, et cetera, were done. So there were a combination. There were, and I stood up here at this microphone at town council meetings, and that's where they were discussed, and when votes were appropriate, resolves were brought forward and authorization was provided, and none of it was done without town council's knowledge or authorization.
Okay, thank you. I just, because there's so much heightened attention now, and seems like there's a bit of stress on both sides, just to know that I think it's really important now that we do have this open conversation and we keep it going at the level that it's going, because there's so much interest.
But I think the confusion, though, that until recently, I think it's very clear now, especially to the public, because when a lot of people talk to me, and they seem to very much understand now. But I think we were viewed as not the proponent, but we were viewed with the proponent, and that's really never been the case. And I think people understand that now.
Although you did say in your comments that you were asked to flip the alternatives. You said
correct.
We were so that was a vote to flip the
town council came to me and asked me to go to Vineyard Wind and to ask if they would consider us to be the primary landing location in their permitting.
So that was the vote for the town council that said go and do that.
No, that was a directive here by the town council at the time to the town manager.
Okay.
Yes.
All
The
right.
votes came subsequent to that when we came back and said, okay, to do that, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And so we laid out those various items that would have to be voted upon.
Okay.
Yep. And that, it's a good question. I've had it many times by different counselors. And I'm good with either way. Actually, a vote for me even further confirms what the town council asks its administrative body to do. So anytime you want to vote a resolve on what you're asking the town on veterans, I mean, small things or very large things.
No, that's why I know.
Absolutely, but
I made the
typically
comment.
that isn't the way that it happens. Typically, the town council will direct, and then we'll take it under review, and then we'll bring back to the town council when formal vote needs to be taken to authorize something.
Yeah.
That's typically how it's done.
Okay.
Okay.
And then Cliff Carroll, thank you. Wonderful comments, and I love the report you talked to about the spill. And I'll just give a very quick story here. I did a lot of environmental work in my past, and one of the things I had to do was an evaluation of a Bomark missile. A Bomark missile, the short version was a tactical nuclear weapon. They were actually right here at Otis in the 60s, and they were never used, thankfully. They were not smart missiles, so to speak. They were going to be launched into the Atlantic to stop the Soviet hordes from attacking us. But what happened at one that was in New Jersey is, and this goes to your point about the accident, the rain event, things happening. I mean, nobody thought. There was a guy doing some welding in the missile silo, and a fire caught on this Bomark missile. And then the fire department came and tried to extinguish it. And what happened is all the plutonium went out of this missile silo, went across the concrete into a river. So the plutonium was everywhere. And it was something that I had to evaluate. And it was quite something. So I really appreciate your comment. We have to think of this worst case with our sole source aquifer, and I think you can't. And people have said you're doing fear mongering, you're doing these kind of things, but I've seen this in my life. Nobody thought that Beaumark missile would ever catch fire, and that would happen, but it did. So it's a very good point you made, Cliff. Thank you so much for that. And then Chuck Tuttle, again, I love that you talked about getting the 1,000 people engaged in something. And again, Vice President Cullum, I think your point is well taken. I love public comment, people engaging here. But when it's of this magnitude, it's important to get everybody engaged on that. And then Heather, absolutely. And I think, the story I said about this Beaumark missile kind of highlights that, you have to plan for the worst, because the worst can absolutely happen. And John Gardner, I like what Mr. Ells is saying. These things have to be looked at. As a veteran myself, we have certain privileges in things, and it doesn't mean we're owed every privilege, but it's something that needs to be looked at. And something we've done that I know Chris Clark brought to the town, and we've refined it, is the Veterans Work-Off Program. And I'm really proud of that, and I'd like to see some more people. I don't know if even Mr. Gardner could be one of our first to take part in that program, but that's a fantastic program that we have available. And then that's when we heard from you, Mr. Alls, and that was very good to hear that history. It helped me a lot. And then we heard from my fellow counselors, and I guess I don't share your outrage. I welcome the comments from the people, and again, Vice President Cullum, you said that the people don't make the decisions; it's the counselors here, and you mentioned the airport, and I brought that to you and the president and asked if we could bring something to the council, and you said no, that you were happy with that. And I still think it's important to do a study. I'm not thinking of this coming season. I'm thinking of the next 100 years, because I do have a little bit of expertise in the area, and I think a study would be a prudent thing to do. But you didn't support that, and that's your prerogative as the leadership, and maybe those things will change as we go forward. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucky. So, Councilor Steinhuber.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted, Mark, I appreciate the overview there, but I can certainly add some more context to this. And you mentioned, Charlie, some of this going back 20 years. So it is important, because every decision you make, even in your own life, you have a frame of reference. You have the facts in front of you. And when that landing was proposed in Yarmouth, it was basically following the Cape Wind route, which still came through Barnstable roads and still came to a substation in Barnstable. So it only made sense to kind of switch that over so we could control that conversation, because it literally was just over the Yarmouth line. It really almost had nothing to do with Yarmouth. It was 95% Barnstable, and the substation was here. So we took control of that situation. But at the same time, you have to remember that we just went through, and I was involved with the group that fought Cape Wind. I was there for years. And the town was right alongside us, and watching how the federal government, the state government would just plow through things, check boxes. We'd line up at EFSB hearings with the Mattokees Middle School and up in Boston, and speaker after speaker, hundreds and hundreds of speakers lining up at a microphone. And it was really just to check a box that they had a public hearing and they moved on, because they had already decided what they wanted to do. And some of the stuff was ridiculous. I mean, the Barnstable Village Fire Department was designated as the emergency response fire department to something in Nantucket Sound, and I don't know if they do now, but at the time, they didn't even have a boat. So, but the federal government was fine with that. The state was fine with that, and that went forward in the permits. So in 2016, 2017, Cape Wind still had a lease on Nantucket Sound. They only surrendered that in 2017 after fighting them for 17 years and spending about $50 million to stop them while they spent probably close to $100 million trying to permit themselves. And then watching how the EFSB steamrolled the town, granted curb cuts and easements and in a super permit, which I think had 8 or 9 permits in it at the time. So when Vineyard Wind conversation starts, and Charlie can talk about this as well, we had deep concerns over how this was going to be treated, because we were just done with, Cape Wind. That was very fresh, and just watching how the federal and state government just plowed right over us. So we took that, you take that frame of reference in as you're having these discussions. And I think we spoke with Vineyard Wind for going on 2 years back and forth, and I remember some of those conversations not being so pleasant. But then getting to a point where they were, Charlie would remember this better, but probably a week or two ahead of their EFSB hearing where they'd get their permit, and we hadn't had any type of agreement with them. But looking at what the FSB had allowed for substation protections with Cape Wind, which was a joke, we couldn't allow that to happen with Vineyard Wind. Drinking water was too important to us. And we weren't willing to roll the dice, for the 50,000 people that live here in the town of Barnstable and for our water supply. So we did get into the host community agreement with them, and the money's nice, but more importantly, it's the environmental protections that we could contractually lock in that the state would not do. And we had seen them not do that just right before that. And even to this day, we've definitely made a lot of comment, pushed on them, and we certainly hope that they will adopt standards for substations here in the state. But even to this day, it's a question mark. If you just let them go with it without us involved, what would they actually allow? And I, for one, I'm not willing to roll the dice on our drinking water and our environment. So I just wanted to kind of lay in a little bit more of the frame of reference that we were dealing with at the time, and we continue to struggle with and comment with the state. But it's really important when you start Monday morning quarterbacking to know the whole story, to know the information that's at the time, to know the 20-year struggle, and to watch how your federal government and your state government is willing to just completely roll over a local community. And even to this day, when you talk about Article 97, I talk to people in the administration and in the State House. There's mechanisms for them to do the same thing. Will they do it? I can't say for sure, but they talk about it, and they have mechanisms to do it. And these are all the things that we have to, as a community, as a council, as your neighbors, as your friends, as your elected representatives, as members of the public, these are all the things that we need to grapple with and decide, are we going to roll the dice? What are we going to do to protect the town of Barnstable? It's people, it's drinking water, and we need to come together. And these are hard decisions. And sometimes there's decisions, neither one of them are the ones you want to make, but we've all come across them in our own lives too, that sometimes you just got to make the best decision you can. And that's what I know that this council and the iterations of council previously have done, what our town management, our staff has done, our legal department, and we'll continue to do that. I have every confidence in that going forward. They're always going to do what we feel is in the best interest for the whole town of Barnstable, for us, for our kids, grandkids, and going forward. So I just wanted to, again, lay a little bit more context and history and what we're really up against and what we've seen happen before and can happen again. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Steinhuber. Councilor Starr, please, and Councilor Neary.
Thank you, President Levesque. I've basically two issues here. One is the November 16th meeting. Is that going to happen? I mean, can we say tonight whether that has Avangrid been?
Avangrid is ready to go on November 16th.
Okay. So are we going to invite the fire chiefs and the water superintendents or water commissioners?
It was my plan to invite the fire chiefs. They'd like to come.
And can we get notice of that out sooner than the agenda?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Just I
yeah, no, and again, I appreciate,
I know
and just to say, I appreciate Mr. Schulte's, coming over and announcing that. I know it was something that I was going to send to council communications, so.
Okay, because I know people have questions about finances, fires.
Correct.
Containment.
Yes.
And maybe at some
Safety
point,
plan.
Mr. McLaughlin can explain. I live in, in the Barnstable Water District, and the transformer station that Vineyard Wind, did I get that right? Okay,
Yes.
Vineyard Wind is going to use is there. It's hydrologically above the Mary Dunn wells, the Hyannis wells. It's hydrologically above number 2 and number 5 wells in our district. And I know Mr. McLaughlin spent a lot of time with containment. And maybe we should figure out whether that's still relevant or whether it should be stronger, maybe pushed a little further. I don't know, because, it was, his comment at one point was that, it was well above industry standards. But, Mr. Steinhilber, what's industry standards, so.
But we got it quite a bit.
Okay, so that's one thought. The other thought is that you talked about Chief Wynn talking about maybe getting a third party to look at fires. I think there are a number of issues where we could use third parties, and we could ask Avangrid to fund some consultants that would come in and look at fires. Do fires start in these things, or are some of the fires I've read about were actually methane gas fires that happened to be in the vaults? So then you get into the electromagnetic fields. I mean, you can do your research and they can do their research,
That's why I mentioned third parties.
yeah. So I think we should maybe write something up for Avangrid and say we want to know about fires, we want to know about containment, explosions. But I think the fire chiefs will have. So that's one thought, and I think the fire chiefs will have some good questions. So I don't know how we hire a consultant. I know it's done all the time. So, and maybe they could pay for it,
Maybe they can.
Okay, just saying. Thank
Great questions. Thank you, Councilor Starr. Councilor Neary.
Thank you, Mr. President, and not to belabor the point. Just a question I had is maybe from Manager Ells. Briefly, if you could just touch base on, I know these are different projects, but the CWMP and how it kind of overlaid on the timeline between conversations with Vineyard Wind and the rollout construction part of our CWMP. Also, keeping in mind that CLF, Conservation Law Foundation, had us kind of accelerate that program as it kind of rolled out as well, the timeline.
So the CWMP has a tentative, because many things have to happen progressively, including your approval of any capital project. But so the CWMP has an implementation schedule. The implementation schedule will be adhered to. It'll be modified at times, accelerate things, move things out if necessary. We've committed, and this wasn't imposed by the regulators, we committed to a 5-year update because there's so many factors that can change. We've just seen them with the new Title V and, certainly changes in schedules for wind projects. And, those are linked, but they're exclusive of each other, quite honestly. The CWMP we are going to proceed with, whether wind goes forward or not. CWMP in the first section of the Vineyard Wind project, we've put in the sewers. They're energized the pump station. We're going to be looking at connections in the near future. So the regular updates that we give once a month, the DPW provides, the schedules they provide are the schedules for the projects. As we begin to look at how us taking advantage of road construction, and that is one of the benefits that was identified. What we were going to try to put in the sewer if and when they did the installation of cable, and we actually went back and modified which segment of the sewer expansion we would do so that we could get it all in along the same route, be in that neighborhood once, get out, and they would repave the roadways, and you can go drive from Colville's Beach up Strawberry Hill Road right now all the way to Finney's, and I hear they're paving Finney's now. I didn't go over there today, but I hear they're paving Finney's, which is good. So the CWMP is proceeding, but with whatever other road construction, obviously the wind project proposals are significant ones. We need to look, we need to make sure we get in there and get out once, and that all of it can work and fit and result in, a brand new road when we're done. I don't know if that answers your question.
Just to follow up, Mr. President. I'm actually looking more for the timeline. I think that when I started in 17, obviously it was conversation prior to with our CWMP plan, and I'm pretty sure these were all kind of going on at the same time. The rollout between accelerating the project, especially up from not Craigville, Colville's Beach up, coming across, and Avant Grid. I think all of the discussions were all basically happening at the same time. I'm pretty sure. I think it was 16 and 17 when we.
The Vineyard Wind, the first one, did happen at the same time. The future projects are subject to whether they get approved or not. Right now, we're looking at the route of our sewers through Centerville, up around Shoe Flying Hill Road area, which is also the route for the Park City Wind. We have sewer in both primary and alternative routes, the way they've identified it. So depending on whether that project proceeds or not, we would try to coincide the installation of the sewer with that project. The unknowns create absolute scheduling problems for us. And at some point, we're going to proceed with the sewer, because if you don't proceed with the sewer project, then we're subject to whatever will result regulatorily by the new Title V regulations, which is basically we default. My guess, we default on our CWMP, and everybody's got to do innovative on-sites, and then half the town's got to do sewer within the next 30 years. So you're going to end up doing both. You don't want that. I don't know if that answers your question, but it definitely creates logistics problems for us when other utilities going in the ground aren't on schedule.
I understand that, and I guess I was looking more at a timeline. When this originally rolled out, with the information from town leadership at the time, it was an opportune event that occurred to basically kind of couple these things together and roll them out.
Yes.
And I'm trying to get the dates down, but I believe that was in at least 17 or 18, might have been before that, 16 when the conversation started with CWMP.
Yeah, we spent between 17 and 19 negotiating what was originally the first project that ultimately split into the two projects, Vineyard Wind. So as we went through the review of the town council appointed RAC, they made their recommendations. We received approval from both from the town, and then went through the state and county and received approval. We actually proceeded with the CWMP, I believe, in 21, even though because SRF funding required us to request capital monies almost 18 months in advance of that. We probably came in fiscal 19 initially and began asking for capital monies. But we've tried to sync everything up, whatever everything is, a wind project or a utility replacement, whether it be a National Grid or whomever, so that we'd get in there, do it once, stay on schedule with the CWMP. In our minds, we're 3 years into implementation of the CWMP, and heading into the fourth. And we're on schedule, actually a little bit ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Town Manager Wells. Any other council comment? Councilor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, President Levesque. First of all, thank you to all the speakers who showed up. Regarding the comment by Mr. Gardner and the Veterans Pass, I do appreciate the town manager's perspective on this and the likelihood that other groups might be looking for a similar treatment. I will let the public know that there is such a thing as a veteran and senior veterans discount for non-residents in the town of Barnstable, so that those veterans can, for shellfish permits, so that those veterans can avail themselves of shellfishing in our town at the same permit price as our residents. So I do recognize and respect the speakers who came today and also at the special meeting on October 23rd for addressing the wind power concerns. And I applaud the town manager for meeting with the advocacy groups as he promised to do. I also agree with Councilor Mendez that there are some residents who are very supportive of this wind project. But I'll share some of my observations after that October 23rd meeting and from some research I've done since. Considering for Avangrid to consider the planned approach for cable laying strikes me as very reasonable, as suggested by the Healy administration, minimizing a spaghetti-style laying of power cables in our offshore fishing waters. As was described in a WBUR article, it would be like having a power strip in the ocean. Each wind farm could plug into the strip, and the state would manage connections to the grid. This would likely lower producer costs and minimize disruptions from multiple landings up and down the coast. As the wind power industry matures in New England, a regional approach is practical, and our governor is working with other states to address a plan. Also, Avangrid could seriously consider the offer by the owners of the Canal Plant in Sandwich to host the landing of cables there. The community around the plant has become accustomed to the power plant there, and that selection would redirect some of the impact to Barnstable's beaches and estuaries to an already existing power structure. Further, I am concerned about the substations and expansions in West Barnstable. I am regularly working to educate myself on the efforts of this wind project for the town of Barnstable, and I welcome the research done by our caring residents and by our town staff. Thank you.
Great comments. Thank you. Appreciate that, Councilor Clark. Councilor Cusack, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add my voice to all those who have highlighted Mr. Gardner's suggestion from Katuitt. I think that's fantastic. I know Councilor Ludke and Rap Grassetti and now you, Chris Clark. So I look forward to hearing about what that study reveals, Manager Els. Thank you.
Councilor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, President Levesque. Are you looking for a free beach pass? Just kidding. Thank you for your service. I do want to thank everyone who came to comment tonight, and not to diminish anyone else's comments, but I think Mr. Schulte had the most important comment of the evening, especially in light of what's been discussed here. And that is that the Energy Facility Siting Board will be at the Tilden Arts Center on November 14th. And more importantly, if you want to comment, probably the most important thing you said, you must register in advance. So I hope as many as you as possible are there. I also want to say that, in light of the special meeting on the 23rd and a potential claim under Article 97, as I thought about that for the last week or so, one of the things, we have a federal government that has a certain green power agenda. We have a state government that also has set some green power goals. And then, of course, we have a major utility company. And in thinking of that potential claim by the town of Barnstable, obviously, I think we would be butting heads with the state because the state has permitted, the state entered into power purchase agreements with them, although 2 are now defunct. But also we, to a degree, will be going up against Avangrid, because Avangrid's going to be saying, well, why would you grant us these permits if you're now going to grant the town's Chapter 97 claim? All of this is only to say that, you know, our legal department, in thinking of any given suit on behalf of the citizens of the town, always has to consider likelihood of success. You know, I would never encourage a client to go forward on anything, certainly not to line my pockets, if I wasn't giving them a realistic view of what the likely outcome might be or what I think the outcome might be. So that would be one of my fears with a claim under Chapter 97, is that, you know, Avangrid would be coming in to try to defend that, the state would be coming in to try to defend that, and, you know, we're the little guy in all of that. I wanted to say to Felicia, I agree that that rationale, the way it reads, you know, it really should read, rather than X amount of tax revenue over 20 years in turn for an investment of the improved value of the property, it should say, in turn for improvement in the market value of the real estate from X to X. It's unimproved value to its now improved value. And then also note that in every one of these rationales, forgo is misspelled. And I also wanted to note that even though the rationale says prevailing rents, each of the actual items does say market rate. So it is clear in the actual items. Ms. Mock, I just wanted to say, I know you made some comments last time about architectural salvage, and I'm all for repurposing. However, I think sometimes, I don't think they're bad suggestions. I feel as a counselor, though, our hands are tied because we can't mandate that, particularly where it's a private sale. That's up to the new owner to decide whether they want to do that or not. And one of the things I'll say in terms of development, the demolition is probably the cheapest part. So, you know, the thing with repurposing and architectural salvage is that takes time. It's not as easy as demolition, and it's expensive. So I might imagine that's why a lot of developers opt out of doing that. I would encourage you, however, particularly with 307 Main, I'm very familiar with that. Opened my first bank account there. Very familiar with the branch, that there are some pretty cool things in there. And I would encourage you to reach out to Rob Brennan and Wind Development to see if they would allow or be open to some salvage. Also, I think deed restrictions are a great idea, but outside of town-owned property or outside of, you know, possibly putting it into a regulatory agreement, we can't force. And I'm sure you wouldn't want someone to come and tell you what you can and can't do on your private property. You know, we can't force an owner of a property to deed restrict it. But I think it's a great idea. Seattle does it as well. It enabled my brother and his family to purchase a house. In Seattle, it's more like a cooperative, an affordable housing cooperative. Something more akin to like what Habitat for Humanity does, where if you ever were to sell one of those houses, it's restricted. Let me see. I think that's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Shaughnessy. Anybody else? Councilor Atlas, please.
Thank you. Mark, thanks for your history lesson yet again on the wind projects. And it's just caused me to think about this some more, and kind of, you know, in my time on the council, and it's coming to an end rather soon. You know, comments that I've heard from residents over my time on the council, you know, like more transparency, behind closed doors, no public input, suggesting that we're having meetings, clandestine meetings in some dark room somewhere here in Town Hall, making decisions in a vacuum, which isn't the case. As we heard tonight, this matter, wind power, has been going on dating back 6 or 7 years. History and process has been shared in our meetings here and during my time on the council and before, as we've heard. The process has been shared at civic association meetings and other meetings in the town. The agendas are public information, has been highlighted again tonight. People can see the agendas before the meetings. They can show up to the meetings and speak at public comment. But just because people don't attend those meetings or weren't paying attention doesn't mean decisions are being made behind closed doors and that it's not being vetted in public. We can't control if people want to show up and pay attention. Now, there is a group that's been paying attention for quite some time, and kudos to them. But there's just as many out there who, unfortunately, believe that we're not listening or we're not vetting things in public if they're not there to hear it, and they're not showing up to hear it. So, and these things have happened at town council meetings, civic association, library presentations, even though contrary to some people's belief that we as a town should tell a library who they can and can't have in there to give presentations. But, I just think to Councilor Cullum's comment, these meetings are public, anyone can show up and talk. We don't do things behind closed doors in dark rooms and make decisions without public in view. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Etzler. Anybody else? Again, this all being said, that I think it's important to understand that I think really good things came out of that meeting, that the concerns that need to be addressed in the prior town council meetings is that we've put a pause on these easements for Article 97. We took a resolve. The town, as it stands today, is not for the Commonwealth Wind project. So really, the next steps, and again, as was explained by Mr. Schulte, highlighted by Mr. Shaughnessy, please register November 14th, Tilden Arts at 4 Cs. It's important that your voice if you want your voice heard, that you register in advance. And I think that it's important that we show our concerns. Another part of the discussion in regards to the petitioners was that the town as well will move forward and vocalize some concerns in regards to that, which we've done. And so, again, working together, understanding that there's a lot of history that goes behind this, conditions have changed, we're recognizing that. I think it's important, obviously probably too much at this point in time, that we have the safety plan in place, that really, again, Park City and Commonwealth Wind, in my opinion, I think it's more important that people understand, and I think people are fearful now because of things that are being said, that of what's going to happen when this 800 megawatts of power, when that moves forward from Colville's Beach. We have to make our residents understand that we care about their safety, that we've taken precautions, that there's a plan, that there's a fire that needs to be put out at Independence Park, that it's going to be put out, that our water supply will be safe. Again, not even talking about, not that that's not important. I want to make sure Quokka Lake is important. I want to make sure that our water supply is important, and we're not going to put any of those things in harm's way. So thank you very much for everybody's comment. Town Manager Ells, please.
Thank you. I actually I inaccurately stated something, and as I sat back down, I thought to myself, I hope that the President of the Council allows me to make a correction. When I stated that if we default on proceeding with our comprehensive wastewater management plan, that it could result in us having to look at innovatives and then ultimately still doing the sewering. Don't want to be clear that I didn't geographically frame that. Now, if I back up, and I wish I don't diminish all the discussion tonight, but I wish we were able to have this much discussion on these Title V regulations, because this is as significant a change in regulation as I've ever seen in my 40 years of working, yet minimal discussion, especially for Cape Cod. But so the way these regs are written, if you are a nitrogen-sensitive embayment, you will have to either come forward with a sewer plan, a CWMP that's been approved, that gets transitioned into the nitrogen management plan, and therefore we follow that plan. Or else we'll be looking at doing innovative on-sites. In Barnstable, we have 5 major embayments. The whole south side, from Pompanesett Shoestring to Three Bays to Centerville, East Bay to Lewis Bay, that's all impaired. Those are all nitrogen sensitive. The north side, Barnstable Harbor, is not. So it's going to become very complicated to understand where you live and what you're required to do, because our north side probably will be required to do something different than the south side if it isn't implement the comprehensive wastewater management plan. So I know that that's kind of technical, but I just want to make sure I'm accurate. You know how I don't like inaccuracy, so.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do it all the
Thank you.
time.
And I think you can submit, there's going to be remote at the 14th, November 14th, at the EFSB, and I believe you can also submit written, I want to say it's through the 26th or the 29th of November. But certainly, what's that? Excuse me?
28th.
28th. It wasn't either of my dates. 28th. So, but go in. I put the link in my town manager newsletter to try to be helpful. I agree that not everybody looks at that, but it's there. If you can't find it, just call. We'll get you. It's a state website. Thank you.
And just so, Ms. Penn, I asked Director Milne to address those questions when the item comes. What I'm going to do is actually, we're going to take a 5-minute break, but we're going to move the town manager communications items and everything from acting on the minutes and town council communications to the end of the meeting and start the orders of the day after this break. So you should get if you can stick around, you can get your explanation relatively quickly. So I appreciate your input. Thank you. So we can take a 5-minute break. We'll be right back. Thank you.
My name was mentioned 3 times. Can I have 90 seconds just to set the record straight on a few things?
less and less people want the job.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to Barnstable Town Council meeting. Appreciate everybody's patience during that very long public comment discussion. But again, I want to thank everybody. And just a final note too, I would also be very in favor of what Mr. Gardner was saying in regards to the beach permits for veterans. That was a great idea, especially in lieu of Veterans Day coming up. So thank you for all those who participated. We're going to go right into, we're going to move some items to the end of the meeting, town manager communications, acting on public minutes, and communications from councilors. We're going to go right into the orders of the day. If you could please, Councilor Steinhilber, item number 2024-053.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is under old business, item 2024-053, authorization of a housing development incentive program tax increment exemption agreement between the town of Barnstable and Atlantic Apartments LLC for 11 new market rate residential units located at 171 Main Street and 16 School Street, Hyannis, as written.
Second.
I got a first and a second. We have a Director of Planning and Development, Elizabeth Jenkins, for the rationale.
Thank you, Chairman Levesque, and good evening, Council. I am Elizabeth Jenkins, and I'm here to provide rationale on items 2024-053, 054, and 055. I'll give a brief overview of the Housing Development Incentive Program to start and present information on each application as we go through. The Housing Development Incentive Program is a tool that's available to gateway municipalities with the goal of spurring residential growth, expanding the diversity of housing stock, supporting economic development, and promoting neighborhood stabilization. Again, the town received letters of intent and then applications for these 3 properties. We have a staff review committee that determined that all 3 of the applications were complete and met the eligibility requirements of the HDIP program. I will note that this includes complete development pro formas. The applications proceeded to a town council TIF-TIE subcommittee. They met twice, once on September 15th, 2023 and October 6th, 2023, and voted unanimously in favor of recommending the applications. The legal department reviewed the agreements, and we intend to work with that department, the applicants, and the Commonwealth to ensure all program requirements are met prior to final signature on the applications. I will note that all 3 of the projects are within, of course, the housing development zone, the growth incentive zone, and our new downtown village zoning district, an area that the town has identified as a focus for redevelopment of underutilized properties and promotion of residential development. All 3 properties represent small-scale infill development and redevelopment. They are being undertaken by local developers and will provide attainable workforce housing in close proximity to jobs and transit. So item number 2024-053 pertains to 171 Main Street, Hyannis. It's Atlantic, and the developer is Atlantic Apartments LLC, Mr. Todd Elwell. The project will convert a former underutilized office building into 11 market rate residential units. There were 2 existing units on the property, but substantial investment in 11 new units. The investment by the developer is $2.3 million, and the requested exemption is 100% of the increased value of the property for the first 5 years, 85% of the increased value for the next 5 years, and 55% for the remaining 10 years. Again, these are estimates that were done by the finance department and by the town assessor based on the increased value of the property resulting from the developer's investment. So the assessor is estimating the tie for 171 to be valued at $237,869 over 20 years. Again, the project was reviewed by the HDIP staff committee and the town council subcommittee, and recommended to approve to move forward. Thank you. And I will certainly allow, or thank Director Milne if there are questions regarding how those numbers are calculated.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Finance Director Mark Milne, to the podium, please.
Good evening, Council. Mark Millen, Director of Finance. So I was asked to comment about the previous speaker's recommendation to the changes in the language to more accurately reflect what the fiscal impact is. And it was a good suggestion to make it more clear that the tie only applies to the increase in value, not the total investment in the property. When I read the rationale, I looked at it from the perspective that the individual who owns this piece of property made an investment of over $3 million. They had to acquire the property, number one. There's an investment there. Number two, they're rehabbing the property. There's an investment there. The investment's probably more than the final projected assessed value of just over $3 million. But the tie only applies to, as stated in the rationale, the $1.75 million in increase in value over what the value is today and what it is projected to be upon total rehabilitation. So we can be more clear in the fiscal impact on that, but the $237,000 only applies to that increase in value. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, Director Milne. Appreciate that. And thank you, Elizabeth Jenkins, for the rationale. Now it is time for council discussion. Any council discussion in regards to this item? Looking to my left. Anybody to my right? Councilor Starr, please, and I'll work my way up.
I just have one question to start. So there are 11 new market rate units. Is there any inclusionary zoning that applies here?
So our inclusionary affordable housing ordinance, the eligibility for that is when you have a project that creates 10 or more units. There are 2 existing apartments on the second floor of the project, so the net new total is 9 units here. That's inclusionary, doesn't apply.
So can you tell me what the rents are in the apartments that are there now?
I cannot, but we have the applicant here if you would like to address that question to him, and if the chair will so or the president will so entertain.
That's fine. Yeah, if they're willing to do that, that'd be great.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Starr.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Todd Owell, just for the record. And excuse
Welcome.
me. Thank you. I coach fall ball for the Barnstable Little League, and we just had a game that just ended, and my son was pitching, and we lost that game. We went undefeated on the whole season, 11-0, and we just lost our playoff game. So I'm a little emotional about
I've
that.
been there.
It's not a good
12 years.
So I apologize. But that being said, so the studios are 1,900, the 1 bedrooms are 21, and the 2 bedrooms are 25. So I got those numbers. I looked at the AMI for the town of Barnstable, and those are 100% AMI numbers for the town of Barnstable.
So that wasn't my question. Was what are the rents for the two apartments that are there now?
The 2 apartments are so one of them's 1,800, the other one will be 2,500.
That wasn't my question. My question: what's the rent right now for those 2 apartments?
Yes, so one of them's 1,800, and the other one is 25, but the people have recently moved out, so we're just getting somebody new back in there.
Okay, I got it, thanks. So another question would be, what do you mean by high-efficiency units?
So the HVAC is all, they're 95% efficient. They're all in every single room has its own heat pump.
Okay.
So, and it's all controlled, we did spray foam insulation all around. The building was totally updated with windows, spray foam. It is as good of a building as you could build today, but I did it so that my goal was to, if you drove by that building every single day, you wouldn't notice that anything was ever getting done. And the aesthetic of the building looks fantastic. So I kept with that aesthetic as well.
So is there gas in the building?
There is gas in the building, yes.
Okay.
That will control the hot water.
Okay. So how much of the redevelopment has already been done?
Well, I mean, I'm waiting on Eversource, which, you know, that could take a long time. They have to run, the engineer hasn't been out yet to determine whether we need a ground transformer or a new pole. Once that work is done, 2-3 months maybe,
Okay.
I guess we're away from closure.
Are there any electrical vehicle charging stations?
There is not, no.
Parking?
Yes, there's 22 parking spots.
22 parking spots, okay. I think that's, thank you. And so you're going to be the property manager?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did this property because I'm a small business owner in town, and over the last couple of years, I've lost several people due to high rents or very poor living conditions. And so this was the best route that I could find to offer employees with housing. It ended up being more important than healthcare for most people. So I'm not really a developer. I'm just a small business owner trying to make it work.
Okay. Could you answer one other question for me? I know this is probably, what does pro forma mean? I don't know. I know everybody else probably does, but that's.
I know Elizabeth can help you with that one.
So I will let our project consultant, Arden Cadron, jump in here if she wants to. But basically what we do is we ask for all of the sources of funding for the project. So the equity, the lending, and then all of the uses of the project, the projected expenses, and the projected income going forward. So we can understand that the developer's ask is not out of line with the overall project costs.
I guess you don't get to answer that, okay. So will the rents stay just about 100% of AMI through the 20 years?
So there's no restriction. Again, this project is meant to incentivize these types of market rate attainable projects that are making investments in neighborhoods that might otherwise lack it. There is an annual reporting requirement where the developer has to submit those rents as well as the information on the units being leased to the town and to the state as well, the Commonwealth.
Microphone's still yours, sir.
One last question.
Oh, you promise?
I think it's the last
Promise?
one. No, so before my time, there was 850 Falmouth Road. Have they been filing their yearly paperwork?
So this is this fiscal year will be the first year that project has gone into effect. So they will be required to file in June at the end of June, the beginning of July, at the new fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Starr. Councilor Lucky, did you have your hand up?
I did, but Councilor Starr, I was asking the same thing about the affordable component because it was over 10 units, but you explained that. So is that always the case? If people incrementally develop 8, 9 units, then you could, in theory, never do an affordable unit?
I mean, I think we would take into account the sort of regulatory principle that we call segmentation. If you're doing it specifically to avoid the requirement, I think we would have the ability to enforce. But again, in this case, the way the ordinance reads, it's very clear that it's new units.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I certainly know other businesses that have taken this same approach to help their employees. I was just curious, are there going to be more room, or is it going to be your employees will all fit into this, or are you going to have ones that will open up to other folks?
Yes, they'll definitely be open to other folks as well. I've been actually talking to other small business owners, and also a lot of the guys that worked on the project asked if there was anything available for themselves personally. So it was pretty interesting to see how I could fill it with just those guys, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I love the small, don't call yourself a developer, but I love this kind of small development, and also that you have, 22 parking spaces. That's terrific.
Fantastic. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucky. Councilor Neary.
Just a point of order, Mr. President. Thank you. I need to recuse myself from item number 2024-053, and I'll leave the dais.
Thank you, Councilor Neary. Councilor Rep Cressetti had your hand up, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you
Mr. Elwell.
Todd.
I'm very familiar with that building. That was Ed Mycock's building
That's
years
correct,
ago.
yes.
And thank you for your investment in the town.
Oh, thank you.
So in 2021, you purchased the property, and quite a purchase, 1.3 million. And just to be clear, the town will continue to collect taxes on the assessed value, which is 993,000. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
So the town will continue to receive those taxes?
Yes.
On that. This one I don't have so much problems with, but subsequent ones I do. So I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Epstein. Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Elwell, and thank you, staff, for presenting this. I have some general questions about the HDIP and TIE that I'm going to kind of preface and then get to the specifics of this particular program. When the town council approved participating in the HDIP, which was an affirmative vote, I mean, the state made a provision that gateway cities could enter into the housing, let's see if I can get this right, Housing Development Incentive Program. And a piece of that was, and actually the primary motivator for that was the state was providing housing tax credits. State tax credits. In fact, the 850 Falmouth project had got significant award of tax credits. Is that true?
So correct. This is a program in two parts. It was a program offered by the Commonwealth and DHCD to gateway cities. We did have to adopt a housing development plan and a housing development zone. We had just reauthorized our growth incentive zone, so the state allowed us to use that for our plan, showing that again this area was clearly designated for the redevelopment of housing, adequately served by public infrastructure and transportation. So the HD zone, as it was originally adopted, was concurrent with the growth incentive zone. And the program is in two parts. One being this local option tax incentive, which, as we've noted here tonight, is a relief from your local property tax assessed by the municipality. And then, if that's approved, a developer can apply to the state for housing tax credits on that level as well. I will note, until very recently, that program was oversubscribed, and we did not think it was going to become available. Just recently, did the state invest new resources in that state tax credit program?
Right. That's my understanding. There hasn't been any funding, and I believe none of these currently are receiving or have applied for any state credits.
Well, so you have to get the local. Exemption. You have to have a local tie agreement prior to applying to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for those tax credits.
Okay. So do we know at this point whether there's funding available for any of these three projects? Is there any availability?
I'm told through what I understand following that legislation is that, yes, again, that program was reauthorized significantly. I know there was a significant backlog of projects in there. So I've yet to hear an experience of a developer apply for one. Again, what's in front of us now is just that local, just the request for the local property tax exemption.
Okay. So when we approved the HDIP designation back several years ago, the component that basically we were authorizing that we would enter into tie agreements, there wasn't really any specific discussion of what those ties would look like. That there is a range in which it has to be a minimum of 10% and cannot exceed 100%.
Over 1 to 20 years, correct. So there
20
are
years,
parameters,
right.
and there is a standard form agreement that has always been available. We were certainly not the first community to participate in this program.
Right. And I want to say at the front end here, I'm very much in favor of the way this program can work, and that these particular projects seem to be located in areas where we would like to upgrade our housing stock and provide opportunities that are not deed restricted, so that there's some flexibility. But I have to balance that, and I think the full council needs to balance the fact that we also have a need for new growth dollars. And I've heard it from my counselors to the left and not so much to the right, but a little bit. That, that's important. So, when we're making these decisions, we are foregoing with an E, tax revenue. So I think it's important for us to, make sure there's a balance to that. In reviewing some of the other gateway cities' tie agreements with developers, I'm seeing probably more modest tax forgiveness than I'm seeing in some of these that are being presented tonight. So I just kind of want to put that forward, that a lot of times these tax incentives are predicated on what does the developer need to make the deal work, which makes complete sense. Is this deal going to happen? And if we don't have these tax incentives, it's not going to work. And so,
I will note that language is not specifically written into the statute. That is a question of how you choose to administer the program as policymakers. Unlike the economic development tax incentive, very familiar, it's very clear, but
workforce, right?
Very, very clear, but for. In this case, that is not sort of a statutory check. The checks to qualify for eligibility for the project, the criteria is different. Again, it's reinvestment in underutilized neighborhoods and producing, housing that meets your community's need.
Right. But again, at the same time, I'm not sure if the proposed tax exemptions are brought forward by the developer or if they're proposed by, I don't know how we arrive at these particular, 100% for 1 to 5, 80. I don't know how those are arrived at, if they're backed into or offered as this is what the town has for tax incentives at this point in
Yeah,
time.
typically, again, they've been based on precedent. We've done a couple of these. We know it's extremely helpful to the developers to have that tax relief up front. When they don't have that, when they have a lot of debt, they have to pay off those loans, and they still don't have a lot of income coming in. So that's how we sort of got to this structure, the 100% sort of front-loaded and then decreasing over time. So again, I think that's sort of traditionally how we've negotiated these. And again, there is a significant review of the development pro forma to make sure that the cost is not out of line or the developer's fee isn't out of line, something along those. I do believe these were the numbers that the developers did request.
Okay, all right. I think that's, again, on this particular, the first project we're reviewing, I think because there was a significant investment and that's the basis for that, there will still be, a significant increase in tax, or there's still taxes being paid to the town. I also wanted to point out, and this is a positive to this approach, is that even though these are residential properties, they do not qualify for the residential tax exemption in our town. And so they actually are paying a higher rate than our commercial rate.
Right.
So in a way, this is a way to kind of balance that for these developers.
And I will note there is a requirement to rent year-round as part of participation in this program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Back to Councilor Starr.
Thank you. So I just need to clear something up. It's so the tax increment only applies to the increase. So
That's correct. So we take an assessment.
So that doesn't include the cost of buying the property?
So there is the assessed value of the property today. The assessor takes a look at the investment, the developer is making in the project. He takes a look at his building plans and then estimates a total assessed value for that property in the future when complete. And so it's that increment, that change between what we have today and what the assessor estimates it will be at completion and occupancy. So land value is factored into that base assessment as well as that future assessment. Not necessarily purchase price, but the value of the land.
So, so the 2.3 million is the difference in the assessed value?
No, that is the 2.3 million is actually the numbers that were provided by the developer in terms of their total investment in the property.
It says with that acquisition.
Right.
So if you take acquisition out, if you minus $1.3 million, that only leaves $1 million. And at $200,000 a unit, that doesn't add up to 9 units. Am I doing this wrong? Okay, that's all I need to know. Sorry, Don. Thank you.
Thank you, Council
I'll ask
Starr.
someone else later.
Looking to my left, anybody have any questions, comments? Okay. Nope, good, okay. Excuse me. Okay, not seeing any other questions. Thank you for the rationale. This is a majority vote, so if, Council, if you could signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Any abstentions? I think it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your investment in our town.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, thank you.
Been there, done that. Hey, by the way, it's just fall ball.
Oh, but it's still not.
I know, not tonight's not the night, but you'll get that. Wait until next season. Take care. Thanks again, Todd. Keep coaching. Vice President Cullum, please, if you could, item number 2024-054.
Sure. Item 2024-054, authorization of a housing development incentive program tax increment exemption agreement between the Town of Barnstable and Dunroven 2 LLC for 8 new market rate residential units located at 68 Yarmouth Road. This may be acted upon with a majority vote.
Second.
First and second, Director of Planning and Development, Elizabeth Jenkins, with the rationale, please.
Thank you, President Levesque. This project is located at 68 Yarmouth Road. The developer is Mark Hansen, doing business as Dunroven 2 LLC. The council may be familiar with this project. It was approved under a regulatory agreement, the proposal being to raise the existing structure that is on the property today and redevelop it with 8 new units, each with 3 bedrooms. The total investment, again, in the project, $2.4 million, and the request, similar to the last one, is for 100% of the increased value for the first 5 years, 85% for the next 5 years, and 55% for the remaining 10 years. The assessor estimates the value of the tie to be $251,304 over the 20-year period. Again, this project was reviewed by the HDIP Staff Review Committee, and the application was found to be complete, and the proposed development meeting the objectives of the plan by increasing residential stock, increasing diversity of stock, and providing workforce housing opportunities supporting economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, Director Milton's here to answer any questions as well. Any council discussion for this item, please? Looking to my left. Anybody to my right? Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, this is sort of a general question across all 3 projects. Are you anticipating any of the other projects that are on the development timeline in the town to be approaching us for a tie?
So we administer the tie in a 2-step process, one being a letter of intent, the second being the full application. I believe at this point we have 1 letter of intent for redevelopment on Barnstable Road, but that is the only project in our significant development pipeline right now that at least I have spoken to regarding potentially pursuing this program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Councilor Luckey, please.
Thank you. Just building on what Paula just asked, is there any kind of size requirement associated with the program? Like you do the residences at 850, which, is a significant development, and then you're doing these smaller ones. Is there any, could you do a 300-unit development? Is there any guidelines on that? I'm just curious.
I don't believe there are any parameters relative to the size of a project that could potentially apply.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Starr, please.
Thank you. I'm a little concerned that there are no maps of these. I would like to have known where they were, but I.
Oh, sure, I can, here.
No, that's, how big is the lot? Maybe Mark can answer. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mark Hanson to the podium.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, Mark Hanson. I'm the manager and owner of Dunroven 2 LLC. Very excited to be here tonight and just looking at this project has been a long time coming, and in an initial meeting, Councilor Cullum had actually asked me, what was taking so long, and if I could give you sort of a snapshot, the property is terribly ugly. There's just no fixing it. But we did inherit tenants at the time when we purchased the property. We spent almost 8 months transitioning. Instead of just saying, we're redeveloping, got to find a new place to live, we actually spent significant time, resources, transitioning those tenants to other properties that we own, some were not. But we were able to move everybody. At that point, that's when rates started getting really scary. And you can imagine, as previous before me had mentioned, you hear development and the word developer, but truly we are a husband, a wife, 2 children, we are a family, and every time we consider putting one of these projects online or when we create housing, we put ourselves at financial risk. We hold all of the risk. The banks, they are very tough right now, and if you can imagine, these tie agreements, we throw around these numbers, 250,000, 200,000, but if you could imagine for a moment, carrying a project like this as a family, pulling your resources before $1 of rent comes in on a project, even as small as ours, and I would consider this a small project, you will carry $100,000 in interest, you'll lose $60,000 in rents, and you'll lose $50,000 in opportunity costs for money that the banks require you to put down. So you can imagine walking into that and you start to sweat a little bit, but you know that you're doing the right thing. We feel proud to invest in Hyannis. We recently had 2 tenants this year, I couldn't believe it, that actually bought houses. They approached me and said, we're moving, and I was thinking, oh, are you going to something nicer? No, we bought a house. We've taken people out of, literally out of the homeless shelters, and I don't mean here, but the organized programs, and they have gone on to really prosper. It's been very, we know all the families, we know all the kids, and right now, because of the zoning and where this is located, and for those of you that don't know, we are close to, right to Town Hall, across from the parking for the steamship. We wanted to keep it more of a family type of project. We could have gone for a greater density now with the new zoning, but we chose to just keep it that way. We're excited to put it together, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Anybody else? Yeah, Councilor Schnapp.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had a chance to read some of your application packet and the letters, I believe, from the Barnstable Housing Authority and Housing Assistance Corporation were very praising of your work with them and working with their probably people of vouchers. I know the price point on these 3 bedrooms are a little bit higher than a voucher. Are you going to see any flexibility in who you might rent to or who you might need to rent to?
So the vouchers and the people that we work with, the families, and we, they have the ability. The housing the housing authorities will say to us, we will, if we see a family in need, oftentimes they may make accommodations. The families are also, they're working families, so they also have the ability to move their own finances, determine what is of importance to them, and to add to that voucher if they'd like to move to those units. We give preference to the people that are already tenants, the families that are already tenants. So if we have some that have a 3-bedroom voucher but are currently in a 2-bedroom rental, we'll give them preference to move into those first. There's very few of them, but with regard to what would be considered market now for a 3-bedroom, I mean, there really aren't many. And we're trying to keep it between what the bank can, it's a juggling act, to say the least, to get to a number. These projects are extremely expensive, and actually, to your point earlier, when you looked at those other programs, I was not surprised to have you say that they were a little more modest. We've had a decade of 3% interest rates, lower costs of materials and labor, so that doesn't surprise me. You would be shocked at how little these projects make, but we are, as a group, I think, committed to bringing housing to Barnstable, and not just have it be a slogan, to actually put shovels in the ground. And these small projects are great. They come together very quickly. And I think aesthetically, we've tried to make some accommodations to make them look a little more to, I think, what the town is envisioning.
Thank you.
Councilor Ludke, please.
Yeah, just one more question. When you mentioned about the voucher, so there's no lottery involved in that?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's good that you can do the vouchers and still work with that.
Sure.
And I love your design, I love your approach. And again, like I said to the previous Mr. Elwell, I really, really like the small developers and the scale that you're working at and your commitment to the town. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it, and we appreciate the consideration, but we're planning, we're here to stay, and we're here to continue these projects into the future. Appreciate it.
Any other questions to my right? Any to my left? Okay. Oh, Councilor Straussing.
I just want to say, both to Todd and to Mark, thank you so much for investing in the east end of downtown Hyannis. That whole triangle of East Main Street and 28 in there. It's cute. At one time, it was a lovely little area, but it's been run down for so long. And I'm so happy that you guys are investing some money into bringing that back, bringing some families back, and really improving those properties. So thank you.
We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shaughnessy. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we take a vote? Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions. I would ask the council to signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. I believe that's unanimous. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your investment in our town. When do you project to be finished by?
About this time next year.
This time next year, Mr. Atwell? When do you think so, Todd?
God willing, January.
Very good. Excellent. You guys are right around the corner from each other, so I'm sure you can compare notes. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to next item. Councilor Atzelis, please. Item number 2024-055.
This is new business. Item number 2024-055, authorization of a housing development incentive program tax increment exemption agreement between the town of Barnstable and CCR Holdings LLC for 10 new market rate residential units located at 50 Yarmouth Road, Hyannis. This may be acted upon by a majority vote.
Second.
First and second, Director Jenkins for the rationale, please.
Thank you, Council President. This is another project in that same neighborhood, 50 Yarmouth Road, Hyannis. That is a picture of the historic property on the historic building on the property that will be retained as part of this development. The project consists of the construction of 12 additional units on the property, in addition to the 3 that are there, consisting of 4 2-bedroom townhouse-style units and 8 one-bedroom units in a multifamily building. This project is being developed by right under the new downtown village zoning regulations. The developer and the proponent is Jacob Dewey, doing business as CCR Holdings LLC. As noted, because of the number of new units in the property, there is one required inclusionary unit priced at 65% of the area median income. I will note that Mr. Dewey made an application to the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board. They approved a $500,000 award for the property on the condition that the development include, in addition to the one inclusionary unit, an additional affordable unit priced at 80% of AMI, and 4 units that are restricted at 100% of AMI, all with CPA eligible deed restrictions. Again, the request by Mr. Dewey is for a tax increment exemption. In this case, 100% of the increased value for the first 10 years, 85% for the next 5 years, and 55% for the remaining 5 years, with a total estimated value of the exemption at $377,534. Again, this project was reviewed by the staff committee as well as the town council committee and found to meet the objectives of the Housing Development Incentive Zone Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jenkins. Any council questions? Looking to my left, please. Council Clark, please.
Thank you very much, President Levesque, and thank you for the presentation. And I appreciate the reference to this historic building, although it is run down, and I did visit all the sites. Will the historic character of the building still be somewhat preserved? I know it'll take a lot of work to bring it to its finished product.
Leave it to Mr.
Thank you
Dewey
very
and then
much.
your
Jake Dewey,
proposal.
developer and manager of CCR Holdings. It actually doesn't have a historic requirement in terms of, we're not in Main Street waterfront historic, and the Historic Commission said it was not a historic significant building, but we are going to keep it very much the same. What we're thinking now is to go back to the original unpainted shingles, but it'll be wood cedar shingles and painted trim and pretty much the same way it is. Try to restore the little, it actually looks worse than it does in this photo right now.
Thank you, Council Clark. Any other questions to my left, please? Anything to my right? Council Lucky, please.
Yes, a couple of questions. One, is the subject okay on this? Do we need to do an amendment? Because it says for 10 new market rate, and there really aren't market rate. You're going to have the affordable component. That's just a procedural question.
Yeah, that's correct. So that would be the program can only be applied to the market rate units. I will note it's somewhat unclear. We are hoping that 100% of area median income will qualify through the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities as market rate.
Well, is that okay? I mean, is that legally okay? Well, you said you're hoping. I mean, is it okay to just leave this as it's written? I'm just wondering for our vote. I'm a little curious.
I mean, I will note, again, these tax increment exemption agreements, although approved by the municipality, must go up to Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for a review of the rents, for a review of the agreements to be approved. So that determination would be made upon their review.
Okay, so we're sending it up to them, and then they will then approve it. And they also know that he received the $500,000. Will that be part of the package or no?
Well, they would be aware of the deed restrictions on the property.
They would be, okay. Yeah, I just want to say, I did not attend that meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust, but I watched the video, and I really admired the way that was negotiated and talked through. I know Charlie McLaughlin was there. It was a really impressive conversation that happened to get to where you are, and I appreciate Jake doing that, to coming forward. And I know we have later on the meeting, we're talking about moving the CPA funds that are then used to do, like was done here, to give Jake the $500,000. And I think it's a really nice mix of the two programs. So, and again, I like that you're keeping the historical building, even though it's not technically historical, it looks historical to me. So That's great. And then you're doing, looks like similar to what you did on Pearl, or, I mean, the units look very similar. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucky. Councilor Rapcorsetti, and then Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, why 10 years on this one? Why not 5? I also watched the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board meeting. They held a couple of meetings on it, and I commend Member Schufelt for advocating on behalf of the town to push for the affordable units in this project in exchange for the $500,000. But answer me, if you could, why 10 years on this one?
That was the request of the developer. I will defer it to him. I will note that the overall investment and construction costs on this project are higher than the two before them.
Maybe
Yeah,
you
so
can
just to speak
give a
to-
rationale why that is, please.
So just to speak to that a little bit, what I've done previously was all 2-bedroom units, and what we've seen before us is larger units. I've heard the need for 1-bedrooms from all kinds of different people. So we're trying to do some 1-bedrooms here. The cost per unit does not go down that much when you're doing 1-bedrooms. And so we sort of looked at the numbers and sort of just determined to stabilize it with current interest rates. Again, this project has not started. Some of the previous projects got in before interest rates made the jump that they did. We really needed to carry through a second set of interest rate changes, which is 2 5-year increments. So the first loan will be 5 years at one rate, and the second would be another five years. So to make everyone comfortable, that's why we asked for a 10-year exemption.
I'd be inclined to bring it down to 5 myself, but I'm going to defer to other counselors and see how they are, and we'll see if we want to make an amendment or not.
Thank you, Councilor Rapcorsetti. Councilor Starr.
Thank you. My question is, are these deed restricted forever? Or just 20 years?
So for the units, no, for the units that are restricted, they must be CPA eligible deed restrictions, which are restricted in perpetuity. The remaining market rate units, again, have no income restriction, but must be reported annually and are required to be year-round for the term of the agreement.
So tell me what CPA means.
I'm sorry, Community Preservation Act. So the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund administered the money. The money came from the Community Preservation Act. I'm sorry.
Do we know, one unit's priced at 80% AMI. Do we know if that's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom?
I believe they're all 1-bedrooms, correct?
So the inclusionary unit is a 1-bedroom. The one that I offered at 80% was a 2-bedroom, and then the others are 1-bedrooms. That's 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Starr. Councilor Schnapp, please.
I think this is a question for Jake, or actually two. Are you planning to apply for HDIP credits at this point, or is that too much of a time risk to?
I mean, we were really hoping to have shovels in the ground in September, October. So, you know, where we are pushed to winter, I don't want to push it off a year. I think HDIP is going to open up to a like open round sort of program where it's, you know, it takes a while to get through. I don't want to wait that long on this project. I think I would look for future projects where that could apply, if there's funds available to bring to Barnstable.
Okay. The house that's here that you're renovating, I'm assuming you have tenants currently?
There are tenants that came with the
Do
property.
you have any plan to help them relocate, or?
We're planning on keeping them there through construction. The first phase of anything to that building will be exterior.
Okay.
So it might be a little bit disruptive to them, but I've given them the warning, and they're not intending on leaving and have no desire to leave.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about, I mean, one of the challenges with any gentrification of any community is a displacement of people who can't afford these new market rate rents. And so to the extent that you all can, try to work with the tenants that you have, or, so that they don't lose housing as a result of our providing tax incentives, that would be a win-win.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Council Lucky, please.
I just wanted to follow up maybe with Jake at the podium and Jessica here, so I can vote intelligently. Could you talk about your 5-year, why you kind of arguing for that? And Jake, could you give your 10-year so I can have some sense of the arguments here in play?
Well, the previous applicants came before us, and they, I suppose you could argue he's looking for 10 years because in exchange, he's offering some affordability to the units. But traditionally, I don't think we go as far as 10 years. I don't recall ever going out 10 years on an agreement, but I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. It's just, I just find it kind of an anomaly that he's asking for 10. So that's, and he has his right to ask for 10, and we have our right to vote 10 or not. So.
I guess I'll just respond, that it's a costly project. I've really tried to keep the rents really in line with really what I think our workforce market can bear. I'm not really looking at the AMI numbers. I didn't really review Mark and Todd's numbers, but, I really am trying to keep it, even Laura in the Housing Trust meeting at one point said, well, why don't you just raise your rents? You still can be under, but there's a difference between what our AMI numbers represent and what actually out on the street people can afford and to live comfortably in our community. And so, with the work that I do on a daily basis, I'm living and breathing it all the time. So I can see what people can comfortably afford. And again, trying to hit that mark there. And this is just another tool to try to help make that happen.
If I could, I think I would, maybe I'd be thinking differently if there was no one living here or if you were converting and creating something new. We already have people living in this situation. That's why I'm looking at it a little bit differently than you.
I'm not sure if I'll. Yeah, I'm not sure. So there's 3 units. I'm not following what the question was, but there's 3 units that are occupied.
Well, you're generating revenue at the, right?
I'm not sure what the question was, though.
Oh, no, you had put forth that we maybe should have a discussion as a council, the 5 versus the 10 years, and I just wanted to hear the arguments. But there aren't people living, he's creating, there's a picture right there. He's got that, what I call a historic house, and then he's putting new ones in back. So there's a combination. Sure. Okay.
Thank you. Any Councilor Shaughnessy, please.
I just want to highlight that in terms of market rate and affordability, even if we're talking market rate, this is still one of the most affordable areas in the whole town of Barnstable. I mean, we're talking Yarmouth Road, across from some railroad tracks and parking for the steamship. I mean, this is not affordable housing in Osterville. This is affordable housing in the most affordable part of the most affordable village in the town. So let's keep that in mind too.
Thank you, Councilor Shaughnessy. Any other comments to my left? Anything else? Okay, not seeing any. Councilors, if you could please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Any abstain? I'm sorry, any against? And one is abstention. So I think we have all, you get that? Okay, great. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for your investment in our town.
I'm psyched for Yarmouth Road.
I know, it's going to be posh.
The tarp, though, right?
And also, too, I just want to, no stranger to these here parts, I just want to recognize Arden Cadron in the audience today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your help through these projects. And it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. Okay, moving on. Councilor Schnapp, please, if you could, item number 2024-056.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an item of old business that may be acted upon by a majority vote. Item number 2024-056, appointments to board, committee, or commission. Resolved that the Town Council appoints the following individuals to multiple-member board, committee, commission. Council on Aging, Janet Kramer as a regular member to a term expiring 6/30/2026. Licensing Authority, Jessica Silver as an associate member to a term expiring 6/30/2024.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Okay, not seeing any. Councils, if you could signify approval by raising your hand and saying aye. That is unanimous. Thank you. Next item of new business. Councilor Neary, please, if you could, item number 2024-059.
My pleasure, Mr. President. This is new business that may be acted upon with a majority vote. It's item number 2024-059. It's an authorization to expend a fiscal year 2024 law enforcement body-worn camera program grant in the amount of $151,554.60. Forgot my glasses. From the Commonwealth of Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, as written.
We have first and second. We have Lieutenant Mark Lynn for the rationale, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam President, fellow council members. Good evening. I'm here in regard to authorization, as was said, to expend a fiscal year 2024 law enforcement body-worn camera grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. The department has been awarded a grant in the amount of $151,554.60 for the Barnstable Police Department to purchase 118 body-worn cameras for all full-time sworn positions. The grant will also fund the purchase of docking stations and camera attachments to adhere to different types of clothing, vests, and uniforms. The initial installation fee on the use of the cameras, activation, review, uploading, and other features is also funded in this grant. A bit of background: the Barnstable Police Department is committed to continuing efforts for transparency, ensuring accountability, and enhancing public trust by effectively using body-worn cameras. The body-worn camera system is designed to record law enforcement activity and to preserve evidence used in criminal investigations, administrative investigations, civil litigation, and disciplinary actions. The body-worn camera system may also be used to advance department training initiatives, policies and procedures, as well as identify employee performance concerns. BPD officers will maintain and use the body-worn camera system in accordance with the procedures outlined in a policy that has already been developed and department training. Finally, it is the policy of the Barnstable Police Department to respect the privacy interests of all persons in the Commonwealth while ensuring professionalism in its workforce. Finally, with regard to the fiscal impact, the initial cost of the camera and the hardware is covered entirely through the fiscal year 2024 grant award, and the expense is reimbursed following the purchase of the cameras. The maintenance contract and overtime for training are not funded through the grant. A supplemental appropriation request will be brought forward later in the fiscal year 2024 to request funds to cover the costs of an annual maintenance contract when a request for proposals is awarded for the body-worn cameras. There are overtime costs associated with the initial training on the full use of the cameras as well. It is estimated that the costs of the annual maintenance contract are at a maximum amount of $150,000 per year, and that the costs for the training are at a maximum of $13,000. That would be a one-time fee with regard to that. All costs associated with this grant contract must be completed by June 30th, 2024. And in conclusion, I'd just like to thank Town Manager Mark Ells for his support of this program since its inception. And in particular, I'd like to thank Acting Chief Chalice for co-writing this grant to be fiscally advantageous with regard to the town.
Thank you for the rationale, Lieutenant Malin. It is now time for council discussion. Any comment to my left? Council Mendes, please.
Hey, Mark. It's like a high school reunion. You, Tim, Jonathan. I mean, we all wear glasses now.
Yeah.
We discussed earlier. Can you kind of just discuss with the council about the pilot program that you ran and how successful it was?
I'd be happy to. So we're the only department on the Cape right now that has ran a pilot program involving 2 of the camera vendors. We've looked at Axon and Motorola. Motorola is new to the game. They purchased WatchGuard a couple of years ago, and they're clawing back on the market share with Axon. Axon right now is kind of the Goliath of the industry, but those 2 are the big vendors. I have to say, I know I gave a shout out with regard to thanking Town Manager Ells and Acting Chief Chalice, but the pilot program wouldn't have been possible without the volunteerism of 25 of the officers of our department. Some of them volunteered immediately, and some of them were asked and really stepped up to the plate. But it's been of particular importance to us. A lot of the departments that are using them on the Cape right now just heard a sales pitch and then made a decision as to how and what vendor they were going to choose. It was really important for us to use the cameras, and see some of the advantages and some of the faults that each vendor had. We're currently in the process right now of trying to pick a vendor, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves before the authorization with regard to this grant.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you. Any other, Council Clark, please.
Thank you very much, President Levesque. So are you saying that doesn't matter which vendor you choose, it'll be the same cost?
So the cost, it's a very good question. Thank you, Councilor Clark. The cost right now that was used is on the high side. It was necessary for the grant proposal, but we have not started to ask for cost or estimates again to not get ourselves ahead of hopefully your authorization with regard to this grant. But that number, in particular, 150,000, would be a number that would be close to a ceiling of maximum cost with regard to what the town would have to put forth. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Clark. Any other questions to my left? Anybody to my right? Councilor Schnepp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
This seems like a big step for us. And how is everybody in the BPD feeling about this step?
So the former deputy is in residence tonight, and he asked the same question because we have had a complete change in attitude, particularly, I would say, within the last 2 years. If I were standing before you, Paul, 2 years ago, I think it would be something that the lion's share of the officers would not want to adopt, and that has completely done a 180. I can tell you that on a national level, complaints against officers, regardless of the size of the department, usually go down 2/3 with departments that start wearing body cameras. And again, I talked with Councilor Mendez earlier about this. It's two-sided because you've got protectionism for the officers, but also protectionism in particular for our residents and their guests. So we've seen a complete change of attitude with regard to the wearing of the cameras, which has been nice.
Great. No, it's wonderful because it's the first I knew that we were making this step forward, so that's great. Just a quick question, so I understand. So the grant amount will help purchase the 118 cameras, and then here it said the cost of an annual maintenance contract are a maximum of $150,000 a year. Do we anticipate that that's something we'll have to absorb into our operating budget, or is
Yes, that would be something
Okay.
that we would need to. As all of you know now, it really comes down to storage, and you're paying for cloud storage, which you would want these companies to be storing the data. It's immense. There are smaller departments that have attempted to store them on servers, and it becomes extremely cumbersome. And so that's really what you're paying for. with regard to that.
Last question. Would each officer be issued their own camera, or would there ever be any sharing of cameras over the shifts?
These are all great questions. So Yarmouth currently pools their cameras, and with regard to, the chief and I felt that buy-in would be much better served from the officers if we could get each officer an individual camera, and that was one of the desires in writing the grant, that with that, each officer from the chief on down to the new hired officer right now would have their own camera, and we want that. That way, there wouldn't be a time where if specialty units were to go out and then they would go to the pool, the docking bay, pool the cameras, oh, only 3 of us can wear them tonight or something like that. So yeah, that was really a big part of the incentive to get the grant.
Thank you. It's great news.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Councilor Lucky, please.
Yeah, thank you for a great presentation and also for going about this in such a methodical way. I really appreciate it. And I was curious, you mentioned Yarmouth. Of the 15 towns on the Cape, how many the police departments have the cameras?
So Provincetown and Truro just deployed. Yarmouth is about, I think they're at coming close to a year. Dennis helped me out with the grant, and the chief with the grant. They've had it for approximately a year, and then Bourne is about to deploy. Falmouth is kind of in stages where they're studying what they're going to do.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's nice to not be the first.
It is.
Or
It
the
certainly
last,
is.
and you're
Yeah.
right in the sweet spot. So that's cool. You have lessons learned. So again, I love methodical approaches like this where you really look at the data. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Lucky. Any other questions to my right? Okay, again, congratulations. Thanks for your hard work in regards to that. And moving forward, councilors, if you could please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you, sir.
I sincerely thank the council.
Thanks. Nice work. All right. Councilor Clark, please, if you could. Item number 2024-060.
Thank you, President Levesque. Agenda item 2024-060, appropriation and transfer order in the amount of $2,500,000 in Community Preservation Act funds to increase the number and availability of community housing units in the town of Barnstable. This is new business and being referred to a public hearing on November 16, 2023.
We have first and a second. Again, we're moving this to a public hearing, referring rather on November 16, 2023. Council, if you could please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. That's unanimous. It is moved. Councilor Schnapp, please. Item number 2024-061.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an item of new business referred to a public hearing on 11/16/2023. Item number 2024-061, appropriation transfer order in the amount of $1,825 in Community Preservation Historic Preservation Funds for the restoration and preservation of the historic artifact known as the German POW bottle, as written.
Second.
First and a second, refer to public hearing again on November 16th, 2023. Council, if you could raise your hand and signify approval by saying aye. It is unanimous. Stay tuned for the German POW bottle and the journey thereof. Okay, going back now, Madam Vice President Jennifer Cullum, please, if you could help me act on the public session minutes.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of October 19th, 2023 as written.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? Council, if you could raise your hand and signify approval by saying aye. As unanimous. Oh, and one abstention, please. Okay, now we have to jump back to the town manager report because we didn't do that yet. So just to Read here, the town manager's report has been pre-recorded and is available to town council and the public. The report will be prepared in written form and posted on the town manager's website as in the past. The town manager and staff will be available to answer any questions regarding the report as presented. The town manager communication for the period of October 18th through October 31st, 2023 included an update on 1, update on budget action calendar. 2, notice of upcoming town council meeting regarding setting the tax rate. 3, update on town council meeting of the voters on October 23rd, 2023. 4, notice of Eversource hearing on November 14th, 2023 regarding the Mid-Cape Reliability Project. 5, update on Cape and Islands delegation meeting with the Cape and Islands Wastewater Trust Fund Board regarding strategy to obtain state funding support for wastewater projects. 6, announcement that the town of Barnstable recreation oyster season opens on November 1st, 2023. Announcement of greening the Gateway Cities grant for planting of up to 2,400 trees in Barnstable. Number 8, update from Elizabeth Jenkins, Planning and Development Director on the local comprehensive plan. That being said, does any councilor have a question for town manager or staff in regards to these items? Looking to my left. Looking to my right. Councilor Starr.
Thank you, President Levesque. I have one question about, you're talking about splitting the tax rate.
Who was the question for? Go ahead, Councilor Starr.
I guess Mr. Ells, thank you.
Town Manager Ells, please.
How do we, can we get an idea about we talked about transfer fees and having to apply for a home rule? Do you know, for real estate transfer fees, like from 0.5 to 2%?
Okay.
Is that something we can discuss at some point, or?
It hasn't passed the housing bond bill.
Yeah.
Well, when it does.
Of course.
Can we talk about it?
Yes.
So like August.
It's got some time.
Okay, good, that's my only question, thank you. Thank you for coming up.
Stay tuned.
I'll just stay
Yeah,
here.
perfect. That would be a great idea. It's a long walk to the back of the room. Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to confirm that next meeting, we will have a short presentation on short-term rentals. I think we had asked for an update on that. And I just wanted to reference a lot of great materials that have been coming out. Again, the housing conference that was last week, a report from UMass Donahue Institute on the short-term rental experience and its impact on year-round rentals in Provincetown. So again, if staff happens to have seen that and can reference that in your presentation, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Any other comment, question in regards to town manager's report? Okay. Then the last item would be the communications from elected officials, boards, committees, staff, commission reports, correspondence, and announcements. Any announcements from the council? To my left. To my right. Okay, not seeing any, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
First and a second. Council, if you could signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.